I think it's nice that I managed to get a woman on the list, but unfortunate that woman is Leni Riefenstahl.
Uh,
it's sort of a win and a loss for representation at once.
Solomon and Smith. Welcome to Solomon and Smith. I'm Jack Truckenpetter. That's Milo Garner. Neither one of us is Solomon or Smith, but together we are Solomon and Smith. Another Wumbo, big boy, fat video for you today. It's going to be long. It's going to be a long one. It's our favourite films of the last 110 years, and we were going to do it decade by decade, but that video would be too short, too puny for our beloved viewers. So we're doing 5-year increments, our favourite film of every 5-year increment from the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, no, from 1915 until 2025, 110 years. We're doing like 5 to 9, and then 0 to 4, and then 5 to 9, 0 to 4. All the decades split into sort of two halves, early 60s, late 60s, early 70s, late 70s. And we're going to do it in 2 videos. In this one, we're going to make our way up to the end of the 1960s. In our next one, we're going to go from the 70s to our current time. And these are our favourites. They're not the films that we consider the most important or the most artistically valuable in some objective sense, although our tastes sometimes overlap with that one for one. These are the films we just like the most, that we find the most joy in, that have become part of our souls. Although we are a literature channel, a books channel, big, lexical input channel, we actually, in real life, are probably more filmy. Both me and Milo, we met each other through film. We are film people,
You
ultimately.
never believe it, but it's true. It's completely true. And when we say film, in this list, the rules are rather broad. It can be a feature film, a short film, a documentary film. Whether any of those will arrive, I cannot say. We do not share these lists beforehand. This is entirely blind. But film in general will be ushering out of us.
Yeah, and we're excluding like made-for-TV stuff just to
Hmm.
prevent me from picking like too much BBC 70s golden age stuff. The Singing Detective, Life on Earth. Excluding made-for-TV stuff. We're going feature film. We're going movie films. You go to the cinema, you see it in the cinema. Feature films. Movies. Why are we not going back all the way as well? Why are we starting in 1915? Why aren't we going to like Georges Méliès and all those, dog chases a policeman things from like 1908? I think movies, like actual cinema event films as we know them today, narratives, that's beginning in the middle of the 1910s. You can feel free to push back against that in the comments, but I feel like that's the beginning of films as we know them, of what the films are. Milo's getting an enormous piece of white.
Yes.
White.
This is really crucial to the lighting setup. You
Oh,
see
yeah.
that?
Yeah. Oh,
Wow.
wow. No, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I realized I was looking rather dull and dim, and it's a film episode. We can't, you know,
we can't
forget about
we
lighting
can't
in the film
neglect
episode.
cinematic beauty.
If you would like to be on one of these episodes sharing your list of favorite films, favorite books, favorite pieces of music, favorite anything, the more weirdly specific that like favorite breeds of sort of South African dog, we're down for it. Send an email. The email's on the channel description. And you might have seen we've already had one guest on this new format, and we're very willing to have more of those. And if you just want to share your list, please do send it in the comments. We'll have a look at that, point out your major errors and successes, and hopefully get people thinking. It's quite a difficult list to make. A lot of heart pain involved,
Hmm.
but also interesting just going through the years and seeing what your taste is, what you seem to prefer. You find out things about yourself you might not necessarily have known explicitly, even if implicitly it was always the case.
Absolutely, and you don't have to follow our format. If you don't want to do this insane one film every 5 years format, one every decade,
One a century.
one a one a century. That's fine. We're open to your lists. You could do a book every century. That would be kind of cool. If you want to do a book a
Hmm.
century, please email us. we'd love to interview you. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already for these and similar lists. We also have a Patreon link down below where you gain access to some extra material. We're enormously grateful for all our patrons. Thank you all so much for being there. And without any further ado, let's get into the list. We're just going to jump right in with the late 1910s. What did you pick?
So my pick for this one, a bit left field, but from Sjörström, the Swedish director Terje Vigen, I think is how it's pronounced, which is based on an Ibsen poem of the same name. It's got one of those sort of beautifully simple plots from the early silent era, where a man, probably Norwegian, tries to go to Denmark to break the blockade in order to get some food for his starving family. It's a British blockade. This is when we used to fight. And then on returning, sort of various problems caused by the British blockade. On returning, finds his whole family has died. Oh dear. But then, at a certain point, encounters the British officer who we can consider responsible for this whole terrible event. And whether he shows mercy or takes revenge is the drama of the film. But the reason I've picked it is not because of the plot or the narrative necessarily, but because it is an interesting counterpoint to various of the other very famous silent films, possibly one of which you will pick, because Sjörström in general, his effect is generated from the natural world. When so many of these silent guys were building these enormous sets, and so many reasons the cameras couldn't be used that easily outside. This is a film set on sort of cliff edges. It's waves crashing against rocks. It's sort of weathered men under the sun, which is somewhat unusual for the period, but for any period, it's just that kind of magical effect. And you get it in films later on. I mean, like Dreyer's Audette, people say that he like sort of timed the camera with the clouds moving by. So it's certainly not a unique effect, but it is just, I think, a film, and so many of his films have this as their basis. It's like The Outlaw and His Wife I could have picked, which is from the same time sort of zone. It's just about being under the clouds, on the cliffs, finding the power in that natural setting. And I think the drama's good, and he acts in most of them. You might recognize him, most viewers, from Wild Strawberries, the Bergman film, where he plays the lead long after his directing days were done. But he's also he acts in these early ones, and he's pretty much as good a silent actor as he is a silent director. So I'll pass over to you, Jack. What are you picking?
Yeah, I went with Griffith's Intolerance, a bit of a basic choice. It's just, it completely blew me away. I knew about its existence for maybe 10 years before I finally saw it. I knew there's just these rumors about, there's this super old film from, 1918. It's the biggest thing you've ever seen. It's like your eyes will water from enormity. I thought, probably not. I've seen films from that time period. Yeah, right. You know, it's probably like filmed on a potato, gonky, and then you see it and like, it's
the shot entering, is it Babylon or Nineveh or whatever, with the arch?
Like so much imagery in this film where you can't believe what you're looking at. From the macro to the micro as well. You know, there's a shot that Pauline Kael described as the most rapturous in cinema history, which is a man passing, I think, a treat, a little chocolate, to his wife across a table on a carriage conveyed by two doves. And it's just an incidental background image, but it's just full of this sort of ridiculously ornate, over-the-top imagery. So a brief summary, it's 4 tales of intolerance throughout history. We have the then contemporary era of prohibition campaigners. We have the Huguenots Intolerance of the Huguenots in 17th century France. We have, I think there's one that's very short, and I think it's Jesus' life himself, or there's like a Christ narrative that's very briefly gone over. But then the main one, the one that remains in your head, is ancient Babylon, where all this enormity is crammed in. And Griffith had these sets constructed. It was like, it's a whole city, almost skyscraper levels of infrastructure went into the creation of this film. And it has a level of grandeur, of enormity, of just staggering, overwhelming power that doesn't really enter cinema until much, much later. I mean, when I first saw it, the thing it most reminded me of was like Minas Tirith in Return of the King. It takes like literally almost 100 years for films to approach this level of ambition with sets, with the number of extras. And on top of that, there's just so much beautiful composition as well. So many lovely organizations of shots. And it's very well paced. It's a very watchable film, very great intercutting between the various time periods. Lots of great like last minute escapes and things like this. It's genuinely like a rip-roaring and adventure. You do get invested with in like various characters in ancient Babylon. You're like genuinely interested in the fate of Mountain Girl 3, you know, these kind of nameless, slightly archetypal characters. But the main thing that sticks with you is just the grandeur, the enormity. It's eye-watering and a thrill, just a total thrill, like the heart
and without
races.
the horrible guilt of Birth of a Nation, which is at times thrilling, but it's just like,
I think,
no.
and I do think Intolerance is way better. I just think it's way more interesting.
Superior.
I think it's genuinely a better film. I think it's not just KKK cope. I think, you know, if the best film ever is KKK propaganda, we just got to call it like it is. But luckily, it isn't. The greatest film ever is a moral tale about the evils of intolerance. I'll move on to my early 20s choice, looking very hard at Buster Keaton, all the wonderful comedies of this time. I went with, though, a Swedish film. The Swedes getting good representation here, called Häxan. I think that's the way it's pronounced. In Germany, it's like Häxan. It's the Swedish word for witches. It's a sort of very strange film formally. Very interesting sort of setup. It's not quite a narrative film. It's not quite a documentary. It's almost like an essay film. And it runs us through witchcraft through the ages. Some of it is a bit like a lecture, and a little hand comes in to frame and points at various aspects of an illustration while it speaks about them in the intertitle cards. Sometimes we have aspects of witchcraft demonstrated to us through like prolonged scenes, through like a 10-minute little short film within it. And it just has a very curious kind of relationship to its material. It presents witchcraft paranoia, witchcraft insanity in a way that's genuinely very moving, and like the Arthur Miller way. You think about what it would be like to be an innocent woman burned at the stake by an angry mob. But at the same time, it also shows you how a mob would become terrified of witches. And it makes the witches genuinely terrifying in the sections about witchcraft. We see them on doing these witches' sabbaths, these like Satan worshipping
eating
rituals.
Babies, like it genuinely some of the most horrifying imagery.
Yeah, we see them like stealing babies and eating the babies. So I really like this distribution of empathy across it. I love it. Makes you a completely terrified, Alex Jones. They're taking the babies from the window and eating them, brain space person. And then also makes you the innocent person being burned alive. I like this distribution of empathy, and I just think it's beautifully shot as well. Like really, really, really gorgeous cinematography and very creative ways of presenting every scene. Like so much early silent cinema, it doesn't quite know what the form of film is yet. So it just plays with it to an extent that's just gloriously refreshing. You know, we'll present this baby eating scene as a narrative. We'll present this witch's Sabbath scene as like a back and forth between pages of a book and like enacted pages of the book in stills. It's just really creative film. Genuinely scary as well. Great like proto horror movie if you're into that sort of thing.
Yeah, and extraordinarily beautiful. I think that the shot of the witches flying across the city,
Yeah,
and there's sort of a young boy sitting on a branch. Watch, it's just, I remember seeing that for the first time, just sort of staggered by the insane beauty of this. You might think a sort of hokey witches 1920s horror-ish film, and there's another shot of a woman in a bed surrounded by coins, just loads of
uh,
coins in her bedroom. I can't even
yeah.
remember the context of
There's a
this. I just
great
remember the image.
yeah, a great close-up shot of an old elderly woman eating a chicken bone in a disgusting way, and panning back and forth between her and the paranoid woman watching her, going, "Oh my God, she's a witch," because of how disgustingly she's eating this chicken bone. Just yeah, just so many images that engraft themselves onto your skull of just rapturous beauty and deep hideousness.
Great. So I think I'll go for my pick for the early 20s, which I believe is an interesting one because you have previously voiced discontent with this film, even though I would define it in a similar sense of a collection of just astounding images, though of a completely different character to Häxan. And this is Fritz Lang's Die Nibelungenlied, Part One, Siegfried, written by later to become mega Nazi Thea von Harbo, but currently they didn't exist yet, so we can breathe easy. And it is an adaptation of the medieval Nibelungenlied, of sort of the Burgundian medieval legend, popular in German-speaking zones. It's a lot of knights and castles and adventures and dragons and battles, this kind of thing, but also merged quite a bit with Wagner's Ring Cycle, which is based on the Nibelungenlied, but also changes it. And this film, it's if you've read the original Lay and you've seen the operas, you can see there's sometimes a bit of a gangly combination of the two to really Wagner it up. But it means we do get Valkyries, we do get all of that good stuff. But I think it is just one of those. Some of the compositions in that film are just amazing, and it has a sort of, I want to call it a structuralist look, and it's very square and it's very 1920s. And you see a shot with the through the forest, and it will be these kind of lines and lines and lines of trees. The castle is sort of cubic on the top of a mountain. All of these, it's has that sense of the Wes Anderson parallelism, but instead of it being that, it's like a tapestry of ancient Europe, and just where all the actors are standing. It's very kind of figurines, plastic. It's not
Uh,
sort
ca-
of naturalistic
yeah, a bit
hanging around.
Caspar David Friedrich or something. Yeah, very
Yeah,
very
and they're
staged.
all
Yeah.
yeah, but then even more maybe even modernist in a way, just the way that they hold these poses, and it's Blakean at times, and it's the scale of it. It has a bit of the Intolerance sense of just that this
Mm.
feels enormous. And there's also there is adventure in it, there is joy in it. I mean, it has a massive dragon that breathes actual fire. It's the kind of thing, for some reason, when they do it in later films, feels somehow less amazing. But when I see it in the like 1923, it's real. Wow. And I
Yeah.
mean part one in particular. I think part two is a quite a powerful film, a little bit on the racist side. It sort of treats the Huns as though they are orcs, which if you view it in that way, it's completely fine. But a little bit Theo von Harbo mode, which slightly disfigures the heart. But part one, heart it does not disfigured at all. You are just in this sort of pure medievalism and wonderful
Mm.
silhouettes against valleys. We have, and the Siegfried story is pretty good. And Hagen with his sort of one eye and his javelin.
Y-
So I think
mm.
it's just worthy of total immersion. And Fritz Lang at sort of the peak of his 5 hour long movie talents. He'd later go to Hollywood to make like noirs and just
B
rap
movie
crime. Yeah,
noirs.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But in in these days, and this is sort of, Metropolis pre-Metropolis era, and every film has to be 5 hours. Again, they were figuring out the form. Maybe movies are that long. Maybe that's just what a movie is.
A
And it's
really
yeah, just
rapturous shot of the leaf falling from the tree and landing on Siegfried's back so that there's one
mm,
part of his body that cannot be protected by dragon blood, which he's bathing in.
it just has that sentiment of the enormous and the total. It doesn't seem like a film that compromised on anything,
Hmm.
or that
Yeah.
anything was refused, or that they got round it with the camera trick. It just feels like they started rolling, and then Wagnerian myth occurred in front of the camera. Like, all right, got it, great work, guys. Moving
Yeah.
on. So I'd recommend it on that mark alone, just sort of to fall into this a genre that never really came to be, medieval German lays. They didn't
Yeah.
really make more of those, but
Yeah.
they made a hell of a mark.
Yeah, my issues with it are all the indoor scenes. Every scene outdoors in the Niebelungen is the best film ever made, no problem. But all the indoor scenes, I don't know. It's people talking in rooms. It's my issue with Fritz Lang silent films in
Yeah.
general, is that eventually people find a room and you're reading paragraphs and paragraphs of their conversations with each
Yeah,
other.
for all the book fans on the channel, check it out. You'll love this.
Yeah, so late 20s, the hardest freaking one. This
Late
is, oh my
20s.
God.
It's because it this is it's silent film is a whole it's not the same as sound film. It's a different art form that just died. And they made all of the great stuff in the late 20s. It was really getting into a wow, what's this going to be? Then it just is ended. And it's not even the end of the 20s, really. It's like 1927. We're barely getting going, and then suddenly all the money is going to like five people standing in a room with mics hidden underneath their blouses reading a play. Fine, that's my piece. But for the late 20s, I didn't have to think too hard, fortunately, because this section is conquered so fully by Abel Gance's Napoleon, the biggest film ever made, the most unmakeable film ever, somehow made by an idiot, but could only have been made by an idiot because only an idiot could just glorify Napoleon so directly and just fall into his enormous shadow. And if you're interested in cinematic technique, they're all in this. Every single one, almost one after the
Almost
other.
encyclopedic, yeah.
Yeah, and some invented, others found, and I tempted to pick a Soviet film for this section because late 20s Soviet cinema is miraculous and astounding in its sort of violent avant-garde, in your face. But Napoleon has enough of that, as well as everything else, as well as being a romance, as well as being a war film, as well as being like an experimental sort of strap a camera to a boy and make him run around film. It's like a speeding train. It's like being in one of these Napoleonic battles. At the end, the screen suddenly becomes like ultra wide and splits into three separate cameras tied together. In it is complete rapture, endless rapture. I want to die as a Frenchman by the end of this film. I need to march into Italy with Napoleon, and that's as far as we get. You see the name Napoleon, you think, okay, Waterloo, that's going to be one heck of an ending. Don't even get close. It's from childhood to Napoleon's army beginning to walk into Italy. That is 5 hours of silent film. Just that. It was meant to be the first of, I think, five. We've got an interview earlier in the channel's life about this film if you'd like to hear more about it. But it really is pretty much every trick in the box thrown at you with the maximum of virtuosity. It is astounding that one man could have levied this much power into one film, which on paper isn't particularly intelligent or insightful. It's not really got anything big to say about Napoleon or that period of history, but it is utterly compelling.
So, yeah, it's experiential. It's like music. It's like Beethoven doesn't have anything interesting to say about Napoleon, but the Third Symphony is
Mm.
awesome. Um, this is so hard. I love Napoleon so much. Even like all the Soviet stuff, the man with a movie camera. those Eisenstein films. I love The Passion of Joan of Arc. What a friggin' film. Imagine The Passion of Joan of Arc coming out and it not being the choice. But this is how good the late 20s are. I mean, absolutely astonishing. But I went with maybe my favorite director, Friedrich Wilhelm Murnau, F.W. Murnau, and what I think is his greatest film, Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans. Murnau was born in Bielefeld, a town so boring that the joke in Germany is that it doesn't exist. From his very early movies, which are kind of rudimentary, a bit choppy, there's just this astonishing visual imagination. This is a guy who seems to have thought in movies already. That's what I love about him. There's just something so native language cinematic about him. He speaks movie the way James Joyce speaks English. Sequence after sequence is done in the most tasteful, fascinating, interesting way through image alone. He made a bunch of wonderful movies, most famous for maybe one of his least interesting, Nosferatu. But I'd strongly recommend checking out the Last Man, The Last Laugh, as it was released in English. His Faust movie, his adaptation of Goethe Part 1, which is just amazing. Taboo, the film City Girl, and this one, Sunrise. So the plot, it's all very archetypal, with man and woman who live in the village, which is close to the city. The man is lured by a vamp to come and live a city life. The way this is presented is wonderful. She sort of does a little dance in front of the village lake, and the sort of images of city orgiastic joy sort of flash out across the lake and dazzle the man. The man is sitting around the house and double exposed. His lover, this woman from the city, is like caressing him, and the man eventually comes to the conclusion he's going to murder his wife. Takes her out into the middle of the lake on a boat, like Godfather 2 style, and stands up and sort of leers towards her like a monster, and then can't go through with it. Starts rowing nervously to the edge, and then when they reach the edge of the lake, the woman runs away, boards a tram, the man runs after her, it becomes sort of a chase. And the rest of the film, it's kind of astonishing that it has the plot that it does. So the plot is that they reconcile, the couple reconcile, discover their love for each other again. This is before the halfway point, and then just sort of have a date in the city. The reconciliation scene is my pick for like my favorite scene in any film. They sit in a church together. This is after they've had a prolonged sequence of the man begging for forgiveness through lots of little gestures, and the woman being just constantly terrified, weeping. They renew their wedding vows because a couple are being married at the front of the church. They renew their wedding vows in this huge, like, ridiculously emotionally powerful scene of redemption. And then they walk out of the church into busy traffic, and the background turns into an idyllic countryside idyll. They're suddenly walking like through an apple grove, and then it goes back from the apple grove to the city, and they find themselves in the middle of the street. It's the perfect marriage of image and feeling in Murnau. He can really get feelings across through pictures. And I just find this sequence so touching and so beautiful. And then the rest of the film is just, just a feast of joyful visual imagination. Like pretty batshit at times. There's a whole sequence where they're chasing a pig who becomes drunk, a baby drunken pig chase. Really kind of ecstatic, frenetic dance sequences. The reason I chose it over any of the other glorious exercises in visual imagination from the same time period is just the fact that it's married to feeling in such a deep way. He's using the effects in a extraordinary, virtuosic, tasteful way, but it's married to something really, really deep, to deep emotional content. I find this across Murnau's films. I just find like he always finds the pictures that mean what the characters are feeling. Yeah, I love him. Made three of the great heterosexual films ever made. A remarkable achievement for a very homosexual man. We
He knew what was going on.
I'll move on to the early 30s now. I went with another German film, Fritz Lang's M. We talked about Fritz Lang's silent films having huge blocks of text over them, and as much as I adore various sections of Metropolis and the Nibelungen, just prevents me from really getting into them. Sound was such a godsend for this guy. His first few sound films are just wonderful. This one most famously, but also like the second Dr. Mabuse film, just fantastic Hitchcockian storytelling. And this is really kind of where that Hitchcockian mode of total film artist sort of comes into being. This is discovery of the kind of film grammar of the films that we know. This is the end of silent film, the beginning of sound film, and Fritz Lang really knows how to use sound. And the fact that his images are never interrupted by titles and you can just flow with them makes you, just lends so much to him. So it's the story of a child murderer on the loose. Astonishing opening sequence of a mother laying the table for her child who doesn't come home. And we see the child being abducted. We see children playing outside, just this back and forth montage between all these various things happening on an average morning, ending with this tragedy of the mother sitting down and her child not coming home. Begins with a child murder. Shocking. And then the majority of the film is taken up with a sort of the mind virus that this on-the-loose child murderer unleashes on the rest of society. We see like the growing paranoia, mutual distrust, mutual disgust and hatred and insanity that this launches on the rest of society. It's a wonderful portrayal of the madness of crowds, of Elias Canetti style groupthink and paranoia and madness. We flip between the various different strata of society, from the lower to the upper, from the police to the criminals, all trying to catch this child murderer, but also just constantly indicting the wrong people, constantly upping the sort of temperature of society to an extent where it becomes like unbearably humid and agonized, and the whole sort of shtick of the film is that society is to blame for creating child murderers. And it's a bit of a cliche message to bring across in the film, but it brings it across with such sort of convincing set pieces.
And I think it's sort of bold when you make it child murder, because when you make it a normal murder, there are lots of reasons someone would murder someone, and a lot of murder is quite dispassionate, especially in a film. You expect it. In Hitchcock, someone will die. All right, let's get to the bottom of it. But to do child murder and to make it such a strange and initially repugnant man, because it is Peter Lorre, right, before Hollywood fame with the bulging eyes, easy to hang that guy. Not a problem. We can lynch this dude any day of the week. No one's complaining. But then to end it with this sudden twist to mercy, and some people do complain about the endings of certain Fritz Lang films like Metropolis, with the sudden, like, it's about to be a workers' revolution, then they just shake hands. It's all right. No, never mind. But this one feels, in its mercy, more bold and more interesting than in that case.
And most of the film is this hunt, this manhunt, all very interestingly visually told as well. Like lots of great stuff about how the police do their jobs, how the criminals do their jobs. Lots of it's with voiceover. It's not really a film with a main character, although Peter Lorre is on the poster and he's the main thing you remember from the film. He's only in it really very briefly at the beginning. We don't see his face, and then towards the end, when he's captured, not by the police, but by the criminals. So all the murderer criminal gangsters are the ones that are putting him on trial. It's, it's like the premise of a Bertolt Brecht play or something.
Yeah, but also like the classic pre-Nazi film of the many you can line up. Yeah, the gangsters are in power now. This is what's going to happen. And Fritz Lang ends up fleeing Germany, leaving behind, the uber-Nazi wife, Thea von Harbo, who I don't believe had anything to do with M. It
No,
doesn't seem to have anything to do with her.
as you're saying, like it doesn't even like make Peter Lorre like that innocent at all. He's genuinely like he's creepy as hell doing this erotic fixation on like I love murdering children. I just really love it in my bones. You know, it's a scary ass guy. But by that point in the film, you're like, of course, these people are everywhere. The world is mad. These people are absolutely insane. Everyone around him. And of course, when you're on trial by murderers and gangsters and criminals, everyone's guilty. Yeah, it's just a masterpiece. I saw it in my early 20s and like liked it well enough, but like the rewatch fairly recently, it was just my god, sequence for sequence. It's perfect. It's an absolutely perfect film. I love it.
Yeah, astounding. But my 1930s pick is of a very different texture, and I think it's nice we can get a few of these ones in. But it is Howard Hawks' 20th Century, one of his early screwball masterpieces, of which he has at least like three or four. So many to
Five. I mean,
choose.
come
Yeah,
on,
yeah.
yeah.
It's it's really it's just and with Howard Hawks, any kind of film you like, he's made the best one. You like gangster films? Yeah, he did Scarface. You like UFO pictures, The Thing from Another World, Westerns, he did them all. You know, he's all over the map. But maybe his truly sort of platonic ideal zone is the screwball comedy. And 20th Century is it's maybe my favorite one. I mean, His Girl Friday is close, but it's about a sort of a impresario, theater producer, director man played by John Barrymore, who discovers this sort of talentless lingerie model and molds her into a genius actor of the stage. But then she, getting a little fed up with his tyrannical ways, moves to Hollywood and becomes a big shot star. Meanwhile, his career dwindles without her, and by certain manipulations, they end up on the same train going somewhere. And this is Oscar Jaffe, as he's called, his attempt to bring her back into the fold and create the greatest play ever written to revive his career on the edge of her stardust. But it is a film of maximal absurdity. I think John Barrymore's performance could be the greatest film performance of any man ever, and it's a performance that I haven't seen his other movies. I feel like he might be a bad actor. I get a slight sense that if you ever gave him, Shakespeare, he'd overdo it. But this is a film where every line is shouted, where his hair is standing at tip-top end because of the electric bolts flowing through his every motion, and everything is over the top. Everything is a grand pronouncement. But that's sort of the point because they're all actors, and they can't actually live except by performing life. And so what they actually really believe or think becomes increasingly ambiguous towards the end because they're both playing the scene against each other the way it should or ought to go. But it's just the comic timing, the dialogue. It's Ben Hecht, which, a name stamped in gold, and Charles MacArthur. They can basically do no wrong. And Howard Hawks, he has such early Hawks. Late Hawks becomes slow and lugubrious and like, hey, yeah, buddy, we got to defend this town from the bad guy. That's late Hawks. But early Hawks is just it's a word a second, zipping back and forth, perfect timing, amazing kind of directorial instinct and spirit. And it's
Very
also
modern attention span, very TikTok friendly attention span.
yeah,
Something
yeah.
is constantly happening. And even the sense of humor has a kind of Gen Z bizarreness to it. There's that wonderful bit where in the middle of an argument, there's a knock at the door, and two sort of bearded, spectacled men in silence very slowly enter the room without bothering to explain themselves. And it's just, yeah, God, it's really funny.
Yeah, and I think Howard Hawks makes great films for or about men who don't know how to say I love you. Almost all his romances are sort of men standing close to a woman they clearly love, but it is not possible for them to say it. They just have to do something that implies it very strongly, and then we're good with that. But it happens all the only angels have wings. In this one, His Girl Friday, they just can't say it. They're too macho to break themselves. I mean, John Wayne in Rio Bravo, great movie about a guy who just can't say he loves a girl for like 2.5 hours. But so I'll swing into the late 30s now. bit of a heavy pick, bit of a difficult choice here. I had three sort of shortlisted. One of them was a socialist film. One of them was a film about pure geometry, just shapes, no political affiliation, just a shape movie. And the other one was a fascist film. And I was sort of weighing them up in my head. And it just, I hate to say it, but the fascist one, this is, I think it's
Yeah,
my
it's like
only,
really bad cinematography, but if you concentrate on the themes, the
what is it
thematic
about?
underlay.
What is it about? That's the thing. Ignore this. Okay, doesn't know how to hold a cat. It's out of focus. Whatever. But what are we talking about? Pull up the script. So the film I have selected. In fact, I've sort of invented a film because it is not the film Olympia Part One by Leni Riefenstahl, but rather the prologue of Olympia Part One. And this is I mean, it's one of two films in 1936, 1938 depicting the 1936 Berlin Olympics. It's an Olympics film. They've made them pretty consistently ever since, and a few were made before. So a lot of people throwing balls and javelins and running races. I will say that as an Olympics film, it's astounding and incredible to see
Yeah.
what not only what is happening, but how it is captured. But I am not actually today talking about that. And it
How's
is
the
frequently,
Japanese pole vaulter going to perform? I'm really
woo!
invested
He's
in this
made it.
guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it does frequently intercut to the face of Adolf Hitler, which it does hurt a little bit. I can't say it's meaningless when it's just, oh yeah, yeah, he's watching. But again, I'm talking about the prologue. Now the prologue is a bit of a different beast. It's shot in Greece. We start sort of on ancient ruins, the most beautiful shots of ancient ruins you've ever seen. The camera sort of moving around, peering around. We're in the Acropolis. We're in all of these places. And then we're seeing these statues, these old Grecian statues, bathed in interesting light, sort of cut against each other, composited upon each other. And slowly these statues become athletes of perfect form. We get a statue of a discus thrower in sort of mid, and then it's a perfect transition into the real discus thrower. And then we see a few perfectly formed men throwing things at places. But believe me, that's amazing. You'd love to see it. And then it morphs again into a sort of dance of nude women with no clothes on, sort of moving their hands around until they all catch fire into the Olympic torch, which then there's a sort of montage through various maps and flags from Greece to Germany. But it looks like something made 10 years later, which when you say it of the 1930s to the 1940s might not feel too meaningful, but it's just amazingly well made. It has this flux of time, the present summoning up the past, bringing to life old Greece, mythological Greece, not merely, historical Greece, of trying to bring back a certain energy. It's got great music, wonderful editing, and we don't even have to give it entirely to old Riefenstahl, because part of the reason that the Olympia films are so good is it's not just her. She might have had a certain talent, but she also had every other talented German at the time under her wing. Every great cameraman that existed was given to her with unlimited money. And one of them was this guy, Willy Silke, who was an avant-garde filmmaker at the time. His film before called Stahltier, or the Steel Beast, about trains, wonderfully strange. He tried to sort of import Soviet style aesthetics into Nazi era politics. It didn't go too well for him in the end. Some stories say that Leni Riefenstahl had him committed to an asylum because he was too difficult to work with, or he might have been legitimately insane. But he is the key camera operator for this prologue. He was sent to Greece on Riefenstahl's orders. Maybe Riefenstahl re-edited his cut. We don't know for sure. But it isn't just Leni, but this kind of mass collaboration of infinite state funds being poured into make the greatest Olympic film conceivable, and they pull it off. They really do it. And
Mm.
the way I'd say the prologue is over when it cuts to Hitler's face. So when you see the face, that's not what I'm talking about. Done, finished. I can include the Hakenkreuz flag, fine. That's the compromise. That's part of it. And I hope it's good because otherwise I've just recommended Nazi slop on the main channel. But I'm pretty sure it's good.
Come on, guys. Well,
I looked at it again just to make sure. No, I think this is.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much like. On the one hand, there are loads of people who really want Riefenstahl's films to be crap, just because that would be convenient if they were crap. That would be a convenient thing. And then there are lots of people who really want them to be good, like a bit like a perverse, like watching Triumph for the Will and hoping it's the best thing they've ever seen. And I think lots of that is in the reception history of it as well. Like, either people want to say Leni Riefenstahl, massive genius auteur, all films are collaborative. Why, uniquely with Riefenstahl, do we say she's not doing the work?
Yeah, people have done this with Griffith. After, when they all realized just how racist Birth of a Nation was, they decided to say, oh, the cinematographer was the one who was innovating.
Yeah.
And it's a little too easy, I think.
And it's true of every film. It's always a collaboration. It's always profoundly dependent. And lots of the best things about films are kind of accidental. My late 30s choice is The Adventures of Robin Hood.
Less problematic.
Michael Curtiz, the same guy who made Casablanca, one of these faceless guys in the back room at Hollywood. It made like 3 films everyone knows, but their names are completely buried. I just think this is just a great fun adventure film. Just a real joy to watch. Just it's a pleasurable movie. Great adventure set pieces, fun swashbuckling adventure masterpiece. So it's the story of Robin Hood, the vigilante wealth redistribution warrior fighting for like Saxon rights against the Norman conquerors in the forests of Nottingham, played very beautifully by the forests of Southern California. I mean, this is another one of those rare films, Hollywood films, that's not entirely in a soundstage. You get gorgeous trees and woodland and outdoorsiness, as well as great schmaltzy Hollywood sets. It's beautiful Technicolor, as beautiful as the other sort of Technicolor masterpieces of this era, Gone with the Wind, The Wizard of Oz. Just everything's wonderful to look at. The green is the greenest green. The red is the reddest red. It's campy delight, Errol Flynn entering like a room of lords and ladies dining on their steak. He enters the room with a deer like on his back, a huge dead stag on his back, which he like throws onto the table before sort of swashbuckling his way out. There's a kind of sweet, endearing social justice, anti-prejudice element to the film that I like because it's Norman Saxon prejudice. Normans and Saxons, think of what we have in common. Norman,
Nothing.
Saxon, what does that matter to me?
Everything.
I hate injustice. Not the Normans. I just love this kind of stuff. And it feels like it belongs to a different time, a time even older than itself. It feels like it belongs maybe to a 19th century picture of Robin Hood, to a Walter Scott picture of Robin Hood. But even then, it feels older than that. One of the things I love about it is it feels like the kind of Robin Hood movie people in the Middle Ages would make. It has a very...
I like if you gave a medieval man a camera, which I would be fascinated by what they would come out with, to be honest. But that it might be something kind of like this.
Everything's super bright. All the villains are obviously mustache-twirling villains. Great, wonderful performances by Claude Rains, Basil Rathbone as like mustache-twirling bastards as King John and Guy of Gisborne. Really great line reads by Flynn. You don't really understand what he's saying lots of the time. The script is just bonkers. It feels like an artifact that comes from under a rock. Yeah, super bright colors. None of this later grimy Ridley Scott's Robin Hood. Everything's covered in filth all the time. Kind of medieval aesthetics, but
brown core.
How the medieval people saw themselves in sort of bright, extreme caricature. Lots of wonderful side characters. I love the guy playing Friar Tuck. Oh god, Olivia Havilland, de Havilland's sublime beauty. It made Marion just every shot of Olivia de Havilland in Technicolor. Wow. Korngold on the score, Erich von Korngold, great German Jewish, like avant-garde kind of opera writer who got sucked up by Hollywood and basically invented the Hollywood score as we know it today. There's a glorious like faux Tristan theme in the Louvre scene in Maid Marian's Tower.
Great period for music, and maybe we should talk about it with some of our later picks, but it's that nice crossover when real composers still existed. Not like today, where they're hitting their heads on bins. But it was, you get, Shostakovich did the score of this King Lear film. Okay.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's amazing.
Score by Prokofiev. What the Yeah. Waxman, that guy who did Rebecca, and Sunset Boulevard, just these guys were just so good. It's a bit a shame because all these orchestras are being recorded on potatoes, but
do you think Robin Hood counts in that sort of subgenre where all American directors sort of accidentally became socialist for a few years in the 30s probably, without realizing it, and kind of they contradict themselves all the time, but it's just every film they make is sort of like Soviet in its attitude.
This New Deal era where just every Hollywood film has just this, if there's one thing I can't stand, it's prejudice. By Reagan America, like it's friggin' Sylvester Stallone. Just everyone is a fascist murderer, thug. Every American just turns into a psychopathic thug. But I like this period. I like the American heroes of this period. Errol Flynn, total psycho. He injected oranges with whiskey because he was forbidden from drinking on set. Complete mental alcoholic, smashed things up. Horrible bastard pig. But he would inject oranges with whiskey, and just in the corner of the set on Robin Hood would just be feasting on oranges. And
that guy sure likes oranges.
I move on to the early 40s. This really hard for me. I looked at my favourite Hitchcock film, Shadow of a Doubt, with a wonderful script by Thornton Wilder. I looked at Lubitsch's Shopper Around the Corner, a completely perfect film and maybe the best film of this period. I looked at Otto Preminger's Laura, which I recently saw for the first time. Absolutely loved it, especially the performance by Clifton Webb, one of the most line-for-line brilliant characters in movie history. But I went with a deeply, deeply flawed film, about half an hour of which I don't like at all. Disney's Fantasia.
It's the pastoral sequence.
Yep, Beethoven's pastoral sequence. Slop. Fast forward. Don't like this at all.
My Little Pony.
I'm not a big fan of hippos dancing. It's fun, it's fun to look at. But I just wanted, first of all, to do a shout out to animation. Like, animation is amazing. We love animation. I love animated films. And Fantasia has just some of the most orgiastic, ecstatic, heavenly imagery. An extremely avant-garde idea for the third film by a studio that was like constantly in trouble. Disney was constantly in financial trouble, even though Snow White made infinite billions of dollars and Pinocchio made infinite billions of dollars. Everything was so expensive to make that they were constantly like in financial straits, and that this company comes up with this ridiculously like niche highbrow idea. We're going to take pieces of classical music and make images that match up to them. Is it going to be a narrative? No narratives. Like a few tiny like micro narratives to match up with the music, but huge amounts of just abstract imagery that matches up with classical music scores. My personal favorites are, well, the opening with the Bach toccata or fugue or whatever it is, with the just lines coming across the screen.
Yeah, abstract shape stuff. Yeah.
Abstract shape, glorious avant-garde abstract shape stuff. The Nutcracker scene. Oh my god, the best portrayal of fairyland in cinema history. The insane rapture of watching a fairy put a drop of dew on a spider web. The spider web turning into a constellation. Just such rapturous, beautiful, beautiful images and sequences. But the reason I'm picking it is the final 25 minutes or so, where we get Mussorgsky's Night on Bald Mountain into Schubert's Ave Maria. The Night on Bald Mountain section, the kind of the most risque, late Weimar period orgy images that Disney ever dared to put on screen. Just this satanic ritual, like Goethe's Faust, complete surreal, bizarro world, freaky deaky Fleischer images. of this satanic orgy being conducted by Satan, who is a mountain, sort of conducting all his little imps and succubuses and monsters into this dance sequence. Astonishing. And then a bell rings, and the devil is sort of frightened away by the sunrise, by the bell of morning, and he caves up and becomes a mountain again. Camera pans away, and we see monks with little lanterns at dawn on their way to the monastery, on their way to prayers in a church through a nighttime woodland. Their lamps are sort of reflected in the water below as a sort of distorted choral version of Schubert's Ave Maria slowly takes over the score. Absolutely rapturous. Just gorgeous, gorgeous images. This final sequence is on par with any of the great moments in later art films in Parmigianov and in Tarkovsky. Images that are so beautiful that you just have to lay back, like just bask in them and just feel. And the final sequence where it's kind of like a Tarkovsky shot. We go into a monastery after following the monks, very slowly pan forwards through this Gothic architecture into a sunlit paradise valley with a rainbow. Absolute ecstasy. Just total ecstasy and joy. And just, because of how wonderful those sequences are and how unique and unprecedented in film history beforehand, or indeed with very few examples since, I just had to pick it, just because the highs are so high.
Yeah, it's almost a shame that Mickey Mouse is in it as he is. But that sequence is a great one, and it's sort of
joy.
like,
yeah.
Can anyone not see Mickey Mouse hearing that quite wonderful piece of music? I don't think it's possible. It is completely colonized. You can hear, to some extent, Ave Maria without thinking of the ending, at least I can. Beethoven's Pastoral, completely innocent of the My Little Pony sequence. Stravinsky, there's always some volcanoes.
I forgot about the Stravinsky. No, it is. I'm gonna like double down on Fantasia. The good stuff in Fantasia is fucking good. Yeah, it's so good.
But the original plan for the Stravinsky sequence would have been greatest film of all time, because the idea was for it to be, not just birth of the world, but also the complete history up to man. So instead, we get the first half of that, which is wonderful. Then it's just dinosaurs fighting for the other half, which, I'm into it. But it's certainly inferior to, what, with that Disney, with those animators, with that sort of reverberating skull, to see life come into being.
Shout out to Leopold Stokowski on the conducting and the
arranging
and arrangements. Yeah, he wrote a beautiful arrangement for Claire de Lune, which they never used. Worth checking out. Anyway, I'll hand over.
Yeah, okay, so my 1940s, to make up for the sins of my late 30s, I've just gone completely the other way and thrown a communist film in there. The political centrists on the channel are currently freaking out in a big way. I'm sorry.
Any extremism will do. The extremists are the best artists. It's universally true.
It typically happens. So I've gone with Sergei Eisenstein's Ivan the Terrible Part 1, which is a film about Ivan the Terrible. It's the first part of his life in what was meant to be a trilogy. In the end, the second film was completed but never released until in the 50s, after a bit of de-Stalinization had taken place. And the third film, written, scripted, never made, which I think is one of the great tragedies in cinema. Eisenstein still seems to have at least 4 of the great tragedies of cinema attached to his personal career, but this is one of them. So what is Ivan the Terrible? It is a biographical film about Ivan the Terrible, but relatively, in the context of this film alone, it might even feel positive. Ivan is a galvanizing, centralizing force who throws out the evil boyars, sort of the dukes and the earls and so on of that period of early modern Russia, and makes the state more powerful, lays down the tracks of what will be the empire. Now, in early Soviet cinema, emperors were bad, kings were bad, and it was all about the people coming together and holding hands. But by the time of Stalin and this period of 1940s, late 1930s Soviet cinema, Stalin thought, you know what, we can reclaim history. And some of these emperors were pretty good, and some of them are kind of like me, which is also good. So at the time, certain people criticized Eisenstein for making what seemed to be not only a glorification of the Ivan, this old Russian tyrant, but also thereby of Stalin. And Stalin was a big fan of the film. And it would only be by part two that we'd see what he was doing was something a lot more subversive, and that in fact this is a rise and a fall. And the ending of the third film would have been truly wonderful. Sort of a man who's been on all his conquests, who's defeated all of Russia's enemies, he's something like he's on like the Latvian coast, staring at the ocean, thinking of this song that his nurse used to sing to him as he was a baby, unable to conquer the ocean, unable to conquer anything else, just staring out at the horizon. And this was going to be the grand statement, as it were, because it's where the first film begins. But alas, we cannot talk about the third film because it does not exist. Why did I put the first one on the list? Well, part of it is soundtrack by Prokofiev. Thank you very much. Wow, just listen to that. He'd later, I think, shape an opera out of this material, and it is incredible. I mean, his soundtrack for Alexander Nevsky, a somewhat worse Eisenstein film, but still worth a look, is also amazing. But it really is the incredible imagery. I mean, people talk about Eisenstein as a montage guy, as a cutting guy, as a man who invented sort of this editing that would transform cinema forever. And he is that man. But people underrate him as a compositor, as a man who can shape a composition and pick some of the greatest faces you'll ever see. A lot of the extras in this film, they have these amazingly sculpted faces with these enormous kind of Renaissance ruffs in these astounding sets with like Orthodox churches with massive Jesus faces everywhere. Everything's a little crooked. Everything's a little surreal. We've got shadows playing against the walls. Towards the end, we have sort of the silhouette of Ivan with this enormous nose and sort of crooked beard cut against this sinuous line of Russian peasantry coming to reinforce him as he's been his rule has been challenged. Amazing candles everywhere, angles. It's just you're in a different world of cinema here, a world that never really was succeeded. Eisenstein is one of those unique artists who constantly invented an art form that no one else really picked up. Even the guy, the other Soviet montage guys, similar, but they weren't quite charged with his ecstasy. And ecstasy is the word for Eisenstein. People often diminish him into this scientist, image by image. If we calculate the mean of 4 equal size shots, then we put a shot of double size, it'll hit the audience with, that's my Russian accent.
Hello, I'm Sergei Eisenstein. How's it going?
Yeah, precisely. But that isn't him at all. He has this weird spiritual, religious energy bubbling under STEM brain.
It's kind of like Isaac Newton, like everyone thinks Isaac Newton, OCD scientist guy. No, freaking weird, like Book of Revelation.
And this is, and so even though he's within this materialist Soviet frame, and he serves it very well in Strike and Potemkin. Look at the films deeper; they have this fire beneath them, and in these later sound films, because we're in sound period now, we're no longer in the hefty cutting. You get a little bit more of that. And I think Ivan the Terrible could be his greatest film. And I'm counting sort of part 1 and 2 as a diptych there. But it really is just amazing to watch. And it has this Shakespearean sentiment to it, which you don't see in the early Soviet films. He is this sort of this great dramatic character. And the censors, when they were watching part 2, when they decided to censor it, said he'd made something like Hamlet out of Ivan as a criticism. You've ruined it. It's like Hamlet, that English garbage Hamlet. What the hell? Why? But that is a sense of what we've got with Ivan the Terrible. We can go to the late 40s now, a completely different offering, but one also, I think, determined so much by its score, so much by the music. And before mentioning the title, I think it's worth remembering that while we have a lot of great composers working in the 30s and 40s, there's also a lot of sort of just background music. It's very nice when you're listening to it. It's got the horns and the strings. But if someone asks you to recall a theme from 1,000 noir films, it's just a texture. It's like a lot of Baroque music is a texture of Baroque. But, it's ephemeral. But this is a score you do not forget. This is the score of The Third Man which is played on the zither, a hard word for some men to say, and it has a sort of twingy, twangy, diddly ding 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 diddly ding 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 thing going on. Just instant bores into the brain. Who is by God? What's his name? Karas,
Yeah,
I
I think
think.
it's Karas, yeah.
Yeah, amazing score for a film which is, it seems like it's going to be entirely normal before tricking you multiple times into being completely abnormal, shot in the bombed out ruin of Vienna, which apparently wasn't gargoyled enough for director Carol Reed. He had even more gargoyles brought in. And if you've been to Vienna, that place has plenty of gargoyles. It's got enough.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
despite,
Vigen, absolutely. It's like a film that's simultaneously loads of people are peaking. Orson Welles is peaking. Carol Reed is peaking. Just all
Graham
this.
Greene,
Graham Greene is peaking, and Vienna has never looked more cinematic as
yeah.
in its ruins.
So it's the story of I think he's like a pulp novelist,
Cowboy
Joseph
novelist,
Cotton.
yeah.
Yeah. Comes to town, expecting to get a job from his pal Harry Lime, one of the great names of all cinema. You're not expecting much. It's post-war Vienna. There's a lot of stops and problems, and you need documents to get places. But then, as he shows up, turns out his friend has been murdered or killed in an accident, or something's up. And so he decides to look into this. He decides to almost become one of the characters in his own pulp novels. And it turns out at the scene of the death, there was a third man present. Who the hell was this? So he gets into this sort of investigation. And the film has a certain streak of genuine surrealism to it, of sort of talking birds,
Yeah, no,
of up
really.
is
Yeah,
down, and just
yeah.
think it has almost a vibe of The Man Who Was Thursday, really, of sort of a chase begins and one thing after another, ludicrous events occur again in this strange, surreal, destroyed city, the likes of which people of the 40s had never seen before. This
Hmm.
is new. Yeah, we've destroyed the greatest city in the world. Want to have a look at it? And
Hmm.
you get, in Rossellini's Germany Year Zero, the
Yeah,
main
yeah.
appeal of that film is, what have we done?
Hmm.
What have we done to the world? This is absurd. But the great thing about The Third Man is the thing you barely get, which is Harry Lime, Orson Welles, who shows up, I don't know, like 5 hours into the film. You see him for about cumulative 12 seconds. He shows up in a doorway. Suddenly the light comes on. He looks at the camera and wow, it's just some guy, really, but it feels amazing. It
Should we
feels like,
like intercut here images of both of us standing in the Harry Lime doorway?
yeah, I think that would be
Yeah.
worthwhile because and in Vienna they don't care about this movie. I think it's worth saying they do have a little museum, I think put up by like an expat from some other country, American or something. But there's no plaque, there's no tour, there's no this is important. They don't care. So it's a doorway in someone's house. But my God, what a doorway. What a reveal. The greatest reveal in cinema history
Yeah,
probably. You
easily.
get
Yeah, there's
John
nothing
Wayne's
close.
introduction in Stagecoach. That's only meaningful because it's John Wayne. This one, Orson Welles, he's already famous. It's not introducing him to the world. And even in the plot, it feels like it shouldn't be as significant as it is, but it is significant. My God,
Yeah,
the world
Orson
shakes.
Welles' smile at the reveal is top five moments in any film.
Yeah,
For no
it's
reason, kind of, and
yeah,
and and yeah, the whole thing taking place with this zither, this ding, 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 the most perfect possible music for it because it has this melancholy but also comedy and humor.
yeah,
And I think maybe the most surprising thing about Third Man is just how earnest and moral it becomes towards the very end. It becomes like a film about good and evil, which is what
yeah.
you're.
In the big way, in the especially post World War II, when it's a million deaths is a statistic. The amount of death, the amount of horror is so big that it's incalculable. It's no you no longer feel anything about it, and it's about a man who's internalized that and decided, well, yeah, I don't feel anything about this. Let's actually benefit. And also the most perfect ending of any film ever made,
Yeah,
which
easily.
wasn't the
Yeah.
original ending. The original ending is terrible muck. It's this amazingly long shot, and you think you know what's going to happen. You think you have a sense of what's going to happen, but you just sit with it for minutes, probably about 45 minutes. People who haven't
Yeah.
seen the film may have a strange view of a 5 hour movie with a 45-minute final shot, but that's kind of the mood of it. And it is just perfection. And when you realize what is going to happen, and then you watch it happening for minute after minute of it happening, it is astoundingly good. It is so I'm not gonna say what it is,
Yeah.
but it is so good.
I think it's transcendental, that finale. That final shot of the third man. Third man is also my actual choice. And if it wouldn't be third man, it would be Kind Hearts and Coronets. Two kind of
Yeah.
mean, cynical, murdering people films. But I've gone with some sentimental hogwash. I've gone with Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life. A little biography of a man called George Bailey in a boring ass town called Bedford Falls. He wants to get out of Bedford Falls, do something with his life, become an engineer or just something, be part of all the stuff that's going on in the world. I want to build bridges, I want to build the Panama Canal. I just want to do something important with my life. I don't want to be stuck in this like middle of nowhere American town where nothing's going on. I want to actually do something. And circumstances intervene to keep him in this small town. This hokey, cultureless little small town, middle of nowhere, vague America.
Yeah, and that is the movie. That really is like
That's the
that's
majority. The majority of the movie is that, and then kind of in the last act, and a lot of people forget that it's the last act. George Bailey's been driven to like the point of suicide by gradually worsening financial situation and the threat of prison which looms over him. It's sort of a Depression era film. He works in a like building and loan bank, who are trying to like do non-predatory banking practices and give people money for houses, you know, FDR core kind of socialist banking vibes. It's another one of these extremely socialist films made by an extremely non-socialist man while he's looking into the water about to kill himself. And this was actually how Frank Capra pitched the idea to Jimmy Stewart. He said, "You're a man in despair. You're looking over the water. You're about to kill yourself. And then you see a man jump into the water, and suddenly you're not thinking about killing yourself. You go in and you save him rather than kill yourself. And he's your guardian angel." And then Frank Capra saw Jimmy Stewart do like a weird thing with his eyes, and then he paused for a bit, and he said, "And he knew that you were gonna jump in, and he jumped in to prevent you from. This isn't a good idea, is it?" And then Jimmy Stewart went, "I don't know, like, I trust you." And then it is this wonderful idea, a wonderful existential idea of what would the world be like if you had not been born. One of the great original concepts in a film. I think it's worth saying, like, this is almost something that you expect, like, Camus or Sartre to have come up with. It seems like something that's more ancient than it is as well. It feels like a folk tale. The man sees the world as it would have been had he not been a part of it. And the world without him, Bedford Falls, it's been overtaken by this big tycoon, this like a magnate, and turned into like a den of sin, Pottersville. It's like, you know, it's kind of these sleazy bars and things. And it's not actually that different from Bedford Falls with him in it, but every little aspect of life, it was just a little bit worse. He'd made the world minutely better in a very small, very local area. He'd made lots of people's lives around him slightly better. Pottersville isn't ridiculously worse than Bedford Falls. It's not like he goes to Pottersville and it's like Auschwitz, you know. He's not changed the world in this radical way. He's just made very small changes to the lives of the people around him. And it becomes like the sentiment at the end of George Eliot's Middlemarch.
Yeah, I was about to say this hidden life.
George
His is the
Bailey
hidden life.
has lived a hidden life, doing small acts of kindness and of love, which have positively affected those people around him.
Interestingly, when I first saw it many years ago, the part of it that struck me most and that I remembered most was this Potterville flashback sequence, and that this is the whole point of the film, and that most of it is him stumbling. But then rewatching it just a few years ago and realizing, oh, that really is. It's like the last 20 minutes of the movie. And in fact, just how good the other part is. The rest of it is this amazing socially real, like it has that energy of the 1930s accidental socialist films, but so well performed. And
Oh God, Stewart's performance
and the
is
disappointments one after the other, life getting in the way, time, and it could just be that, and it would still be a great film. It
yeah,
legitimately, you could get rid of the supernatural conceit. It could
absolutely,
end
yeah.
some other way. Even if it ends sad, it could be a sad film. It's still a great film. And it turns out on the rewatch, well, I like the Potterville conceit, but it's maybe out of a film with so much good stuff, my least favorite part, only because it's the least subtle. A lot of the film is
Yeah, it's
very,
very on the
whereas this one,
nose.
it
Yeah.
is Potterville, it is a bit of a great man theory of history, but in the smallest possible frame. Whereas, you'd imagine if a European made it, the differences really would be minor, but important. It would be like one thing. It wouldn't be like, oh, your brother would be dead
Yeah,
and
yeah.
a banker would rule the town and there'd be a brothel and everyone's depressed. This is a good way of doing it in this frame, but you'd imagine a more subtle artist, it's just the one thing you need. You don't need it to be that big, but then that's what gets in your head. And you get
Yeah.
the great ending because the ending doesn't actually resolve any of the problems in the film. And it's one of the very rare films under the Hays Code because the Hays Code said bad guys had to be punished. And in It's a Wonderful Life, you have this Potter, you have this banker, this very evil man, but he is not actually fully punished. He's
No,
forgotten
yeah,
in a
yeah,
way.
yeah.
He falls out of the narrative of the film. And so actually the big problems, the economic issues, yeah, he gets a big bowl of money at the end.
To pay
But a
off
lot of
like one little bit of debt he has, but you get the
yeah,
impression Potter can, with his like predatory practices, he will eventually win. And America is Pottersville. Every small town became Pottersville. Potter won American history.
hmm.
The George Baileys were like brutally eliminated from American history. So it's a tale of the losers, and it's a little something that the losers will have over the winners of the American 20th century. Yeah, wonderful performance by Stewart. There's a great section where he, like, the banister at the bottom of the stairs is not glued down, and it becomes
Yeah,
like
yeah.
an annoying little thing for him. And at the start, it's like, oh, ho, ho, the banister, there it is again. And on the night of despair, there's this wonderful moment where he picks up the banister and he's like so pissed off. Like, this fucking thing now. Like, everything I've been through today. And he's about to throw it and doesn't. And it's performed so beautifully. I love the bit where him and Donna Reed, he's getting this this guy telling him like about Bitcoin or some get rich quick scheme that will eventually work. He's saying, "I'm telling you, George, you're gonna be rich if you listen to this plan." And Jimmy Stewart is just looking at Donna Reed, listening to him over the phone, and they gradually get closer and closer as this phone call gets quieter and quieter. And just the whole way that sequence is played is beautiful. It's just beautifully acted and put together. Scene for scene, I just really love the way it progresses.
And the European version would fail in the genuine romance and the general joy of the early bits. Lasso
Yeah,
Around the Moon, they couldn't do that. It would be realist, it would be very sad and depressive, or it would be French and kind of
yeah,
vaunted. But this is a uniquely American ability to be kind of hokey and cheesy and, hey, I'm a good old family man. And then disappointment, disappointment, disappointment. And then this really high concept, almost meta ending. It's an amazing combination of things that shouldn't really
yeah.
work.
And it's taking a lot of things from the general supernatural vibe in the air at the time. There's lots of plays, lots of films that have supernaturalism in them with ghosts. I'm
Yeah, a
thinking,
matter of life and death that comes to
yeah, the
mind. All
play
the post-war.
Thornton Wilder's Our Town has lots of like familiar resemblances to it. I think it was a major reference point for Capra while making it. I really love it, and I love its sincerity. It's the coping mechanism for Potter having won American history and creating, Springfield from The Simpsons maybe is just the irony, this ironic displacement that kind of Americans tend to have towards their fate. Yeah, everything's corrupt, but what are you going to do? Our system seems to reward sociopaths. Yeah, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And It's a Wonderful Life. I just love the sincerity of it, and that wonderful final little written line. It's the last line of the film isn't spoken. It's like written to George Bailey on the piece of paper, "No man who has friends can call his life a failure." I'll move on to the early 50s. The 50s is maybe the most difficult for me, actually. The early 50s and late 50s, wonderful time period in European cinema and in American cinema. Maybe not as a whole, but like there are so many masterpieces. Looked really hard at Sunset Boulevard, but I had to go with Singing in the Rain. Absolute, joyous film. I love how popular Singing in the Rain is. On the last Sight and Sound poll, it came like 5th or something. 5th most popular film of all time among critics and directors. Really? I'm like amazed by it. The Telegraph recently voted it as the greatest film of all time. Like Telegraph readers. And the thing that strikes me about Singing in the Rain that sort of hasn't been said very much is just how weird it is. Every single musical number is a bit of a left field introduction of chaos energy into the script. You know, the ostensible plot is this hilarious setup of silent film actors who can't make the transition to sound. There's a woman with a really squeaky voice who can't make the transition to sound, and the sort of man who's put alongside her, the leading man to her leading lady, these big silent stars. He is just like a really hokey old-time silent actor, can't do natural speaking roles, and they just can't make the transition. And there's lots of great comedy setups, comedy scenes, but the musical numbers, which are the thing you most remember from it, like, barely one of them has anything to do with moving the plot along.
Yeah, Moses and his toeses and the roses. What?
Yeah. Like, make 'em laugh. You know, it's just the wonderful sidekick, greatest sidekick character ever, Cosmo Brown, by Donald O'Connor. Every single line is a zinger one-liner, and he gets a claim to immortality in the musical number "Make 'Em Laugh," where he just does wonderful Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin, falling all over himself stuff, along with like balletic genius. All those sequences with the puppet, my god, ecstasy, joy. It has nothing to do with the film. The Moses Supposes section has nothing to do with the film. The greatest part that has nothing to do with the film is the whole Broadway melody. So there's a film they're making within the film, and they're like, the film within the film needs a prologue. You got any ideas for the prologue? Yeah, I've got an idea for the prologue. 20 minutes of this film within a film that then has a film within the film as well. It's been a part of my life.
We really have to thank the Red Shoes, because the Red Shoes did a really relevant version of that. And then the next 10, 15 years, every American musical, we do need the enormous, staggeringly beautiful sequence of limited relevance to the rest of the of course, we've got that in production.
Yeah, and Gene Kelly was, completely driven into anxiety of influence, Salieri madness by the Red Shoes, saw it every single day of its cinematic run, weeping, going, I will never do anything this worthwhile with my life. Basically tried to insert the Red Shoes ballet into every one of his films. American in Paris has a Red Shoes ending. Gene Kelly's choreography throughout this, just on point. What he gets out of himself, most obviously, these insane helicopter dances, the actual Singing in the Rain title sequence in the milk. He's a man with a huge fever dancing in milk, and it's legitimately seems like absolute cosmic joy. But yeah, it's been a part of my life, my entire life. It's my mom's favorite film. I've been watching this film for as long as I've been watching films. Loved it at every different period of my life, and you start to love different things as you get older. When I was a kid, I just loved Donald O'Connor most of all, and all the comedy sequences in it, just all the color, all the dancing, all the fun in it. As I get older, I love more and more the schmaltzy romance bits in it. The sequence where him and Gene Kelly and Debbie Reynolds are on an empty Hollywood soundstage, and Gene Kelly builds this scene almost like in a Brechtian theatre sense. He says, and here we've got sunlight on you and the wind, and he builds this love scene for her, and then they dance through it. It's just gorgeous. And the Broadway melody, Dance Within a Dance, when Gene Kelly and Sid Charisse are on this huge runway that seems to be on a cloud,
the veil
on a cloud at dawn. Sid Charisse has this enormous veil going behind her that a wind machine does all this crazy stuff with. Oh my god, it's beautiful. And all the bits that aren't singing and dancing in it are also a joy. Yeah, that whole beautiful girl sequence, I don't see that get talked about a lot, where we just get this sort of fashion ad in the middle of it.
Mm.
The universally beloved, everyone's favorite musical ever film has like a 10-minute fashion ad in the middle of it with none of our main characters.
Yeah, and I think a lot of
Yeah.
people don't necessarily realize because limited exposure to early musicals, but it is a nostalgia piece. These are
Yeah.
mostly all songs from a couple of
Yeah,
decades
well, yeah,
previous.
we watched this Judy Garland, Mickey Rooney film, Babes in Arms. Has 4 Singing in the Rain songs in it. It has like Good Morning in it. Has Singing in the Rain in it. It had like Fit as a Fiddle and Ready for Love, and it had like it was so
And
strange.
Broadway Melody itself, I think.
Broadway melody itself, yeah.
Yeah,
It's it
and Good Morning was written for that Judy Garland thing, but it's just yeah, it's so for us all those songs are from Singing in the
but
Rain.
it's a
But in
jukebox
fact,
piece. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, no, it's a jukebox piece from the first like golden age of the musical,
yeah, and I
which is
think it,
maybe why it feels a bit random because what songs do we have? We don't have anything about silent movie stars becoming outdated. Oh,
well,
it's a morning, isn't it?
yeah.
So good
I
morning.
guess it's a morning. Yeah, and outperforms them. It's accidentally better than everyone involved in it knew it was. I think it's sort of strange. It's one of those films like when you drive down whatever it is, 8th Avenue, and the Empire State Building, when you drive past it, is just one among many buildings. As you drive further and look in the rear view mirror, you see the Empire State tower above everything surrounding it. And that's what history's doing to Singing in the Rain. Singing in the Rain
Mm.
gets better and better and better as we get further away from it. And all the things that are strangest about it are the things that are most endearing about it. Oh my god, it's a fun thing. Do I do another one now? No, I hand
I
over
think
to
it's
you.
over. Yeah, it's
I'm
over
gonna
to
go
me.
get a glass of water if you. Somehow I only noticed this while editing, but Milo's late 50s choice is actually his early 50s choice, and his early 50s choice is his late 50s choice. Somehow my glass of water trip frazzled Milo's brain, and early and late 50s choices were equally frazzled. In tribute to all the non-linear storytelling editors of film history, I'm going to leave the mistake in. So what you're about to hear is Milo's late 50s choice, followed by his early 50s choice, introduced the wrong way around.
Early 1950s, what have I got? I have a melodrama from the Soviet Union. Very frightening stuff. The Cranes Are Flying, directed by Mikhail Kalatozov, a film with some of the best cinematography of any film ever made. You might be familiar with Kalatozov because he directed Soy Cuba or I Am Cuba, a Cuban communist propaganda film. From my recollection, not that interesting in terms of content, but again, wow, the camera is flying, floating. It is in every conceivable position and place. Now, The Cranes Are Flying is not quite so abstractly intense as that film, but it does make you, especially in the early 50s, rethink what film can actually do, where the camera can go, how the camera can make you feel. It really seems to be completely loose and unchained, exactly where you want it to be. And so I'll give you a brief sense of the plot. It, I think, starts on the day that war begins between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. We have these two young lovers, and the man decides, I'm going to sign up, volunteer, join the war effort. And they don't have a proper farewell. They're sort of running through the crowds, climbing on the bars. Already, you can sense you're in an amazing film. And you know, it's so far very cliche. It is a very standard melodrama, but heightened to such extreme levels. In a way, you know, you might think of Douglas Sirk with a very different kind of melodrama, but it's happening on the other side of the world in, you know, around Moscow. So anyway, we've got this separated couple, and various bad things happen. So our girl, she moves in with her husband's family because her family are killed in some kind of bombing in an astounding sequence of again just light and shadow. And there are great shadows in this film. And then while in that house, I believe the cousin of Boris, which is her man, rapes her in another really quite memorable, aggressive sequence. And in the shame of it and the guilt of it, they end up being married while Boris is away fighting the Nazis. And here we could have a very standard film. And Kalatozov has made pretty aggressive propaganda before. He has this film, A Nail in the Boot, like an hour-long film about one's duty as a soldier, which I think is one of the most terrifying films ever made. I think it is. It's like evil propaganda. It's like if you limp because you got a nail in your boot, you are culpable for betraying your nation and should be hanged kind of a film. So keep that in mind. This could be a film about those women who, when their men go away, they get hooked up with someone else and they don't have any real values. They don't stay true to their man. But this is a film filled with empathy, suffused with empathy, understanding I think she's Veronica, a name with a V,
Yeah.
understanding what her circumstance that she couldn't resist
There's
this
that
man.
great sequence where she's listening to a guy in a hospital ward consoling a soldier whose wife has run off, saying, "If she ran away from you when you were at war, she's a trash woman. You have no need to be worried about losing such a woman. Women who run away from their husbands while the husbands are at war are just evil bitches," and it goes on and on.
Yeah, but we're on the other.
And
We're in the
we're
empathy
in
zone.
her watching this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we get it. We're thinking of all the possible reasons because we've just seen a wonderful. We've just been in that brain, and that is sort of the structure of the whole film. And we get a bit of Boris as well in the war, and he has this amazing. I mean, I think he's sort of gets in an argument, then gets sent on a suicide mission
Hmm.
with his like comrade because that's just how the Soviet military was operating at the time, and ends up heroically dying in battle. But it is an amazing scene of death. It reminds me a lot of Tolstoy with Prince Andrei when he's laid on the field staring up at the sky. There's an equivalent shot of just staring up into the sort of infinite
Yeah.
welkin.
And he
And
remembers a scene we saw early in the film of him
yeah, yeah,
running up a spiral staircase to go and visit the girl at the top, Veronica, whatever her name is. There's this ecstatic shot of him like running up the staircase in excitement to go and see her. And as he's dying, we get the camera spiraling through the trees intercut with the footage of him running up the spiral staircase from earlier.
and it's hard necessarily to express it just in language because I think it is an interesting film and I think it's a very empathetic melodrama and it contradicts a lot of the assumptions you would make as it is going along and it has a really good final section where Veronica has sort of been rejected by Boris's family, rejected by a lot because they oh you're one of those, right? However, she sort of stumbles upon this I think he's a little orphan boy also called Boris and that's one of those kind of cosmic coincidences that makes life worth living again and to decide not to kill yourself. I mean, maybe this is like a link to It's a Wonderful Life, a film about not killing yourself and in fact devoting life to life despite this enormous agony. It is a film with so much agony, but it is just in the astounding camera work, the astounding direction, the ability to frame all this stuff and to bring it vividly into the mind. And it's the thing cinema's best at doing. Cinema is very good at taking sort of mediocre, like a pulp novel no one's ever heard of, and enlightening it to sort of like maximal high art.
It's extremely moving at the end when she gives the white flowers out to all the returning Soviet soldiers. Another overlap with It's a Wonderful Life is an ending that in other hands could have been horribly sentimental, being the most moving thing in the universe because you've been through the life.
Yeah, and it avoids being the kind of propaganda film in so many respects it could have been, and sort of is in a way. Like if you're going to be
Yeah,
really
yeah.
broad, it is a state-sponsored film about women home at war, and it's making certain points, but it just happens that the state wants people to be deeply empathetic to one
Yeah.
another, which is
Yeah.
fair enough, if that's the message.
Yeah.
But moving swiftly on to the late 50s, which is another extraordinarily difficult choice. There were a lot of heavy competitors in this region.
It's like peak
But
Kurosawa, peak Bergman, like peak Fellini, friggin' peak
oh yeah,
Hitchcock. Holy
yeah.
crap, it's a good
And
era.
and some
Kurosawa and Ozu and Mitsuguchi. Go on.
you said it, Ozu. That's what I've gone for. I've gone for peak Ozu, late 50s, the film early summer often confused with late spring, late autumn, an autumn afternoon, and other such equally great films. But I think for me, Early Summer is the best one. I think it is the absolute peak of a filmmaker who seems to exist at a sort of continuous peak from the 40s to his death, making almost the same film from every conceivable angle because they're not quite the same. They always alter at least one element, or they're from a different perspective. It's the father to the daughter, as in an autumn afternoon, the daughter to the father, as in late spring. It's just this situation. For those who don't know the films of Ozu, they're family dramas, very domestic, very, very low stakes, often about a son or daughter being married off, or about parents interacting with their older children. Any really variation on that idea you can imagine is probably covered in one of them. Marriages that break down and then make up. He made a couple about younger people. In almost every film, there is a contrast between old traditional Japan meeting new post-war American Japan. This is like a really strong metaphor. I like the idea that Ozu couldn't really have existed in any other time. Earlier in Japanese history, he wouldn't have that dynamic. And now the traditional is that generation had gone. He needed to be in this pivot of change because his entire artistic project, I mean, in the early 30s, he made, gangster films and all kinds of things. But after finding himself in the late 30s, his entire artistic project is to depict the moment of change, that almost imperceptible tick to tock of the clock. Something has to change. And it reminds me of that section in Sonnet 104 of Shakespeare. Ah, yet doth beauty like a dial hand steal from his figure, and no pace perceived. So your sweet hue, which methinks still doth stand, hath motion, and mine eye may be deceived. How do you position a film at the exact moment where one kind of life becomes another? Now, Early Summer is part of what people informally refer to as the Noriko trilogy, typically about a daughter called Noriko. Now, in Early Summer and Late Spring, Noriko is leaving home. This is the thing. She's getting married. She doesn't want to, but she's getting married and leaving her family. And the film really is about that moment. In Early Summer, I think she's 28, which in olden Japanese terms is like being a very old maid. And it's sort of last chance because time does not stand still. If she does not get married to someone, then she will not remain the permanent, dutiful daughter. She will become something else. Life will change. Her parents will become elderly. And it is impossible to keep that dial still. And yet it is this horrible moment. One must leave what seems to be perfect. Perfect family life. I love being here. I love being with these people. I love this being the universe, but it cannot last forever. And the great thing about a director so obsessed with this moment of imperceptible change, of the shadow of the sundial, somehow getting from there to there, despite seeming completely still, is that he almost never depicts any drama, any significant scenes. His films often have marriages. We never see the marriage. His films often have arguments. We almost never see the argument. We get what is before and we get what is after, and we sort of piece it together in our head. We see that Noriko is growing closer to this sort of widower who lives next door, but completely off screen. They decide they're going to shack up and they're going to get married. And we miss that whole bit. That's gone. We just get the aftermath. Like the family, we're surprised. We're sort of like, oh, this is what's going to happen, and life is going to continue onwards. And we get constantly this shot, and this is the most pat shot imaginable. And the film starts with it. It's a bird in a cage. Well, there you go. Great. So it's like you're trapped. It's like you're a bird trapped. But the greatness of this film is that image takes on so many different meanings, and we don't have to imagine the bird in the cage as a slave who hates life, because that is sort of Noriko with her family. She's in that kind of cage. She likes it. She doesn't want to leave that cage. She ends up in a different kind of situation. Liberty is not her ultimate aim. But like with The Cranes Are Flying, Ozu is just like the master filmmaker of empathy, the master filmmaker of really digging into what seem like, I mean, they're so restrained in these films. All these characters, they speak in an almost monotone. The camera is in almost all of them completely still with these like stock mid shots. And it will go from this character to this character as they converse. Everything is almost automated in his style. But beneath it, there is always a moment in almost all of them where suddenly the emotion is too much for me. I just sort of break. It's this pressure building and building. You don't even notice. I think in Early Summer, it's just a shot of Noriko's two parents sitting on a step or a bench in a square, realizing that time has passed. That's it. There's no drama. It's not a big weeper. It's not like, okay, here we go, Spielberg time. E.T.'s going home. It's just this moment of quiet. Two old people sat together, completely demolishing. And so Early Summer, while I think it is his best film, I think it stands in for me as this is Ozu. This is his art. This is what he can do. This is the amazing thing he accomplished. And I know some of the later color ones have that. These are all black and white. So far, I haven't had a color film. And when he discovers color, it's like, God being given the rainbow in a monochrome world. Like, wow, look at this. Look at this amazing reds and greens and browns. But I think just in terms of the pure narrative, the pure drama, it is Early Summer is my late 50s selection.
There's this Japanese concept like nagori, which means like lingering remnants or traces or after effects of something that is passing or has already ended.
That's it. That is the whole project. But handing over to you for your late 50s selection.
Yeah, so late 50s are extremely difficult. I mentioned all those names earlier. My actual choice is The Night of the Hunter by Charles Lawton. It's my favorite film of this period. I think it's a perfect film, absolutely perfect. I think it's the best American movie. I didn't go with it though. I've gone with something weird. Again, with the sort of Fantasia logic that even though there's lots of this film I think is, worth smearing mud over your eyes to avoid looking at, the good stuff's really good. It's called Madhu Marty by an Indian director called Bimal Roy. I think it's 58. The independent India isn't even 10 years old yet. Bollywood is learning what it is. It has lots of kind of schlocky genre elements in it, but with an interesting twist, especially perhaps for a Western viewer. Dark and stormy night, driving a car through these like small country roads in the rain. Suddenly the car breaks down. Oh no, we're in the car in the middle of a rainstorm, in the middle of, there's a small abandoned house, like an old mansion up there that we can go and knock on the door of. They get out of the car, they knock on the door, go into the mansion. The passenger in the car, already on the walk up to the mansion, has this eerie feeling that he's been here before. The caretaker who's taking care of this old abandoned house from the colonial era leads them around. He shows them a portrait of the previous owner of the house. And the guy in the back of the car suddenly knows the portrait, and doesn't only know the portrait, he painted it. I painted this portrait in a past life. Cut. We're suddenly in his past life, in the colonial era, I think in a specific mountain range that's one of the main joys of the film. It's almost entirely shot outside in these mountains and has just gorgeous, gorgeous nature photography. Yeah, the Gorakal mountain range. Jungles between lots of small villages up in these hills. Jungles full of tigers, As soon as he goes into this landscape, he bursts into a song, the first song of the film, about the beauty of nature. And my God, does the film show the beauty of nature during this song. One of the other main things that I love about this film, apart from just how beautiful the nature cinematography is just the music. The composer is this guy called Salil Chowdhury. I gather he's a bit of a Bollywood legend. These are absolute monster hits. Just great tune after tune written for the film. I just love the image of this bureaucrat like walking through the jungles and the waterfalls, singing about the beauty of jungles and waterfalls. The main plot of the film, he falls in love with this village girl. This illiterate woman of the village, Madhu Marty. And apparently in India, this is like taboo breaking for like bajillions of reasons that we don't understand. Caste system stuff, village people, city people stuff. So there's this forbidden romance between the two of them. Tragedy strikes. There's a bit of a mustache-twirling villain who sort of ends up sabotaging their love. She dies, and we get him mourning for her. And occasionally bumping into like ghosts and apparitions of her, including a final sequence where, as part of a plan to trick the villain, they get a woman dressed up exactly like her who pretends to be her ghost, but then she doesn't arrive and it turns out it was her actual ghost that he ends up staring with face to face. It really feels like genuinely quite like really sad that they don't end up together. You're really rooting for them, all their little song sequences together, all their little duets, all the back and forth longing, his songs about her songs about him, in these beautiful landscapes, amid these trees, amid these waterfalls. Are just gorgeous sequences. Wonderful to watch. Really, like, you let it flow over you, just the sheer beauty of it. It's tragic that it doesn't come to fruition in this past life, but then we go to the future life, and on the next day, they sleep overnight in the mansion, and he meets his wife at the train station. His wife is Madhumati. So even if your love in the past life doesn't come to fruition, you will find love in a future life. A really good gothic reincarnation film. It has certain resemblances to something like Wuthering Heights. There's this hill overlooking the landscape where Madhumati's relatives were all buried, and she goes there to sort of commune with their spirits. There's this beautiful spiritual gothic undercurrent going through it, and also the implication that she is all of her past relatives, or she is all these spirits of the past. It's just one of these films that really takes the constant reincarnation going through nature and builds a kind of gothic romance out of it. Loads of extremely flawed, extremely schlocky elements, really stupid villain, loads of cliche script writing, formulaic junk in there, but the rhapsodic natural beauty, Chowdhury's wonderful songs, and the really endearing performances by the main two actors more than make up for it. It's just a joy to watch.
It's one of the enduring mysteries I find, that Indian cinema is so underexposed among Western cinephiles. You'll talk to a cinephile who's like, yeah, I've seen everything Turkmenistan ever made, knows everything about Korean, Taiwanese, Japanese, like Senegalese cinema. They've checked out the stuff from Argentina and Brazil. They've encyclopedic knowledge of Mexican cinema. China's on the back of the hand. But India, which has the second largest film industry in the world, they were making silent films. There were some great Indian silent films from the 20s. They were really early on it, developed the musical form, hugely popular in America for decades, maybe less now, but for decades. But the only guys that really got big, it's like Satyajit Ray, who is the most European conceivable Indian filmmaker. And we have the like Guru Dutt, who they call the Orson Welles of India, who has this wonderful Dark and Shadows and all this great music and all these really ambitious films. And yeah, it's just fascinating that even the people who they mark themselves as the international world cinema guys, seeing every tiny European country, they know all of it. But as soon as it gets to India, not even one, it's zero. Satyajit Ray and nothing.
Yeah,
it's astounding. And it applies to me as well, because obviously this is what is screened, this is what's available, and it doesn't filter down it's not on the lists. Mm-hmm. It's not in the big rankings until ours right now. But I really wonder what's behind this particular prejudice. There's so much out there, and when you meet an Indian who's a cinephile, they can just go on about 4 hours about all the greatest filmmakers you've never even heard of. It's not even like, oh yeah, I never saw that. It's sort of, this guy is considered equal to Hitchcock, and you don't even know his name. How did this happen?
Yeah, shout out to the guys at Mubi for putting all of Bimal Roy's films on there. They'll do like, oh, he's the Indian Rossellini, And he does start neo-realistic. He kind of made a wonderful remake of Bicycle Thieves called 2 Acres of Land that I can also highly, highly recommend. Extremely good film, but Madhumati transcends. It's like this isn't like an Indian Rossellini. This is a Bimal Roy film. It's its own thing. Rossellini didn't have singing and dancing, and if he does, it isn't this good. I'd love to, at very least, watch some more films that Salil Chowdhury did the score for. Because this guy is just one of the most talented songwriters of the 20th century. And
it's a wonderful thing that in Indian cinema, you go for the composer. You go for the lyricist. Oh, who directed it? No, but the lyrics are by this guy. I gotta put my ear to those words.
By the way, all the guys who've uploaded Madhumati to like Indian YouTube, stop cropping it. Stop cropping this film. It's 4:3. It belongs in 4:3. Look at the trees. You're losing the height of the trees. What was wrong with you people? Is 16 by 9ing this thing? Absolute nonsense move. It's like one of the freaking best films I've ever seen, and you guys are cropping it. Shame. Shame on Indian YouTube channels with like 9 billion subscribers who just upload Indian films. My 60s choice, early 60s choice, a very untypical film of the 60s, typical of maybe a bygone era. Great epic. I've gone for David Lean's Lawrence of Arabia. Very, very famous film. It's the story of T.E. Lawrence and his involvement in the Arab revolts against the Turks, a British Empire divide and conquer technique for taking control of the Arab world for British interests, retaining control of the Suez Canal. The Arabs are used as a sort of pawn in a game to weaken the Ottoman Empire so that the British can flood in and take control of the region, and we get a very localized version of this story through the character of Lawrence. There's quite a few differences between the way the film portrays Lawrence and the way Lawrence portrays himself in Seven Pillars of Wisdom and how Lawrence actually was in real life. I'm not going to get into those very much, but they are quite interesting if you want to look at them. The Lawrence we get in the film is the only British guy in Arabia who seems to know anything whatsoever. Kind of a typical figure you get in the British Empire, like the one guy who can speak Chinese in Hong Kong, this whole sea of officials and civil servants who don't know anything about the culture they're involved with. Lawrence is extremely involved in Arabia to a point where it troubles those around him. They're thinking he's going native. He's trying to pretend he isn't white. He only drinks when his guide drinks. He wants to be part of the Arab world. He's interested in them. He's interested in doing things their way, not doing it his own way. And it's about our main character. It's about Lawrence. Despite all of the extraordinary cinematography, despite the epic scale of certain sections of it, the assault on Aqaba is just absolutely enormous. It remains fundamentally a character piece about this main character. And this is my pick for best performance in a film. I think Peter O'Toole is extraordinary in this. He does things that I don't think are possible in acting. Gets across such extreme, mutually irreconcilable emotions through his performance, through those dazzling, bloodshot blue eyes in front of the desert sand. Just watching his face the entire time is absolutely fascinating. The whole thing through Lawrence becomes a bit of a psychoanalysis of the British Empire, of why the English have this attraction to exotic places, to locations that are harsh, to locations that are hostile to them. Lawrence doesn't like the green and pleasant land. He likes the desert because it hurts, because it's painful. It's like fire on his skin. And the very first time we see the desert in the film, this metaphor is played exactly, and probably the most famous cut in film history. It's one of the most marvelously edited films of all time as well as its other virtues. A match burning down slowly to his fingers, and the moment it singes his fingers and starts to burn his fingers, he blows it out. We cut immediately, before the flame is out completely, to a sunrise, the sun rising in the same part of the frame where the match was blown out. The whole film before then has been inside offices. It's been claustrophobically indoorsy film. And like Matu Marti, the feeling of coming outdoors is extraordinary, especially when it's the desert. Great score. Obviously, don't need to talk about the score. One of the great
Star
movies.
Wars theme backwards. Just interesting to know.
Yeah, and but the main thing for it is Peter O'Toole. And just this psychological portrait of himself, and through him, the English and their fascination with the rest of the world, and that being bound up with sadomasochism. It's the same way George Orwell analyzes it in Burmese Days. Despite all the smog that's thrown over the impulses for the British Empire, the fundamental impulse is one of sadomasochism, of enjoying being in pain and enjoying inflicting pain on others. And in one of the strangest twists for a main character in a mainstream movie that everyone loves, he goes completely wild with bloodlust and sadism. It's very rare that we have a main character, a sympathetic main character, who partway through the film has to do his first murder and enjoys it. And then we get these, sequences where you can't sort of believe what you're watching or believe how sort of Tory and staid and conservative the reputation of this film is, when it really is like some kinky ass shit going on.
Yeah, the Turkish prison sequence.
The Turkish prison homoerotic, like he's being raped, but he certainly enjoys the lead up to it, where he's being beaten in front of the Turk who's about to rape him. The sequence where he goes to like massacre this fleeing caravan, and just the shot of O'Toole's face before like they charge to do this completely pointless, horrific murder of these fleeing civilians. Yeah, it's just, what are these emotions in a mainstream Hollywood film, And I love that David Lean got this out of him, that despite all the elements of it that feel like old school, we're talking to each other in RP English about the situation in Arabia. There's really this extremely transgressive, subversive element in this film.
There's a fire under it, and you get it from the beginning, but it is persistently and consistently there. And it's also just, I don't know, I feel like people often almost use it as shorthand for like old-fashioned, hokey, probably a bit racist view of Arabia with the white savior. But it is already the criticism of the white savior.
It's about
June.
That. It's about
June.
What...
Yeah. June is not Lawrence of Arabia, but if we turn it up to, it's just an adaptation of Lawrence of Arabia. That is already the point being made. It doesn't matter. Yeah, fine.
Like all your postmodern subversive readings of it are the film. The film is that.
Like, it doesn't have another bit. There's no bit where it's just glory. Yeah,
Alec
to the
Guinness
white
is
man.
in brownface. That's it.
Right.
And he is the main weakness of the film, which is an extraordinary thing to say because Alec Guinness is usually the main strength of every film he's in.
I still think it's a decent performance, despite all the impediments thrown upon him. Yeah. But that's like, and even, he's meant to be sympathetic. He's not meant to be the kind of crude and ugly Arab ruler.
I can we talk about how freaking good Omar Sharif is in this film. Omar Sharif, what an absolute unsung hero of Hollywood in general. I saw the Barbra Streisand, like, Funny Girl film fairly recently, about a year ago. Omar Sharif is so good. I love this guy. Is he still alive? Let's get him on the show.
Yeah, get him on the show.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, do we have a contender for best entry of a character in a film through the
Harry
kind
Lime.
Of
wavering,
oh my
warbling.
Gosh. Yeah, if anything could rival the Harry Lime introduction in Third Man, it is Omar Sharif in Lawrence of Arabia, just coming out of the distance from this mirage very slowly. It's like the end of the Third Man, actually.
Yeah, exactly. And it's worth looking at his early performances in these Egyptian Yusuf Shahini films where he first emerged. He's like strapping young lad, but an instant mega charisma. As soon as you see him in this sort of minor role in the small Egyptian film, you kind of know this man will conquer the screen, as he did.
Yeah, and I love the up and down sympathy we have with O'Toole as well, because there are parts of it where we really, really rooting for him, And to make you root for the guy who's doing all these horrific massacres later, all the subversion that's going on is fascinating. Great script writing as well, something that doesn't get brought up a lot in this film because there's so much else to look at. There's a section where he's covered in desert sand. He's been in the desert for ages, like alone, and he meets a British officer who yells at him, "Who are you? Who are you?" Cut to his face. Doesn't respond for a few seconds. Cut to the next scene. Yeah, just throughout, like, there are so many wonderful cuts in it. Great shots of, like, British soldiers' feet going cut to camels. It's an absolute masterclass in editing, which happens to have astonishing desert photography and the best performance in all cinema. That's my sell.
It's just one of those colossal everything films. Could easily have been my pick. We're back over to me now, aren't we?
Yes.
For early 60s. Yep. So that could easily have been my pick. Been a major film for me through my life. One of those sort of early films I saw and realized, okay, this medium can be the biggest thing you've ever. It can just completely encompass. And I remember, particularly the shot of him first admiring himself in the blade
With the
of that.
dagger, the
Yeah, and
images it
apparently
imprints in
Peter,
your head. Yeah,
yeah,
Peter
Peter
O'Toole was
O'Toole's
just,
idea.
yeah, he
Yeah,
was
because
just
he thought,
doing
what would
it.
I do? I've got all this new stuff. What would a young man like me do? Well, I'd admire myself. What have I got to
Yeah,
look at? And then it, of course, with all the violence later, it's such a pregnant image of
yeah.
that will be him.
The,
He is
the
in the
bit
knife.
the bit when you see, sorry, it's talking about more about Lawrence of Arabia, but there's this shot when he's like, you see his feet in the foreground walking over this train that they've just blown up, and all the Arabs are at the bottom, like yelling like "Hail Lawrence" or whatever, and it looks very very fascistic, and I think deliberately he's standing on them as the shot goes. He's like standing on their heads as we
Mm-mm.
in the foreground as it pans along.
Yeah, because
Um,
he's sort of he phrases himself as the liberator, as the like they will have their own state, they will stand on their own. But it's never quite that.
and
It's never
I-
quite
and
that.
it's a bit ambiguous how much he knows whether he's betraying them in the back of his head. Like even though he feels like I'm one of the Arabs fighting for the Arabs, doing Arab independence. Somewhere in the back of his head, surely there's cognitive dissonance. He knows this is just going to be taken over by the British consulate in Cairo. Great
Yeah.
final scene where he's been Britishized again. He's wearing British clothes again, and they're in the car driving away, and he just sees some Arabs on the side of the road, stands up, watches them go by, sits down again.
And it's just a film. It's like a 4 hour movie filled with that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
But so for my choice in the early 60s, another film with a lot to say, though a very different way of saying it. The film is How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb by Stanley Kubrick. Now, we've spoken about one of the great performances in film history, Peter O'Toole. Here we get three in one with Peter Sellers. Now, Peter Sellers is one of those tragic actors who is one of the funniest men ever, but you look at his filmography and it's mostly junk. It really, like after the first four or five, it's like, oh, we won't get into it. We've got Peter Sellers in his triple, originally quadruple, lowered to triple role as Doctor Strangelove, a sort of a post-war German mega scientist with certain hang-ups about the Third Reich. He plays President Merkin Muffley, President of the United States of America, and he plays Colonel Mandrake, I believe, a sort of snooty British RAF guy on a secondment in America. And the whole thing is based loosely on a very serious novel called Red Alert, a nuclear novel about what would happen if a rogue agent in the United States suddenly pressed the nuke button and triggered the mutually assured destruction of the entire world. In the 60s, a pretty pertinent and worrying state of affairs, which very nearly became reality. Kubrick, on adapting this material, makes it extremely funny, an extremely funny film. Mostly, it seems, about male impotence and the desire to not be impotent as a male. So we get this most obviously with Colonel Ripper. There's lots of great names in this film. Colonel Ripper, who fears that the Soviets have stealing his precious bodily fluids or intend to make his precious bodily fluids impotent. We presume this impotence predates the film, but as an act of either sort of defense or preemptive defense, he has decided they must destroy the Soviets to protect the precious bodily fluids of himself and all other ripe American men.
Even the
And
opening sequence of the docking in space, like two airplanes docking with each other, is like an impotent airplane who's just
yeah,
failing to
yeah.
dock with the other
And
one.
this is
Yeah.
this is the theme of the entire film. I mean, when you first meet Buck Turgidson, okay, and he's sort of having a fling with the secretary and is called off before he can go through with it to come to the war room. But essentially, we have this Ripper character who is he sent one of his bomber groups to nuke Russia, and they're basically trying to figure out how do we stop this man because he's locked down the whole base. Him with this rather like quisling mandrake. They've locked down. They're willing to fight other American troops because Ripper is going to tell his soldiers that it's a false flag operation and the Americans coming to stop him are actually secretly Soviets. This is a real issue. How do they actually stop this guy? And the great kicker of it is so Muffley decides, oh, I'm going to phone up the premier of Russia and tell him we may nuke you, but don't worry, it's an accident. You can shoot down our planes. World peace is assured until we find that Russia have developed this doomsday device that automatically, on being hit by any bomb,
Destroys the entire
will
world.
destroy the entire world. And it's designed as a deterrent. And Muffley said, you know, if it's a deterrent, why the hell didn't you tell us about it? You can't keep the deterrent secret. That's a terrible idea in the premiere, so that we were going to announce the deterrent tomorrow. It's unfortunate timing, but the big announcement of the deterrent was tomorrow, but unfortunately the bomber has come today. So it becomes this sort of weird collaboration between the Americans and the Russians to try and shoot down these planes before they launch their payload. But man, is it a funny film. It's a really good one because it's beautifully made. It's like amazing Kubrick cinematography, wonderful sort of structural schematic, but just some of the funniest gags you'll ever meet. Amazing performances from Terje is George C. Scott, who was tricked into his amazing performance because he wanted to play it straight. But on every single take, Kubrick said, and do want to way over the top. We won't use this. Just way over the top to get out your system. That is every single take used in the film. George C. Scott, mortified by this fact, but it is just amazingly funny. The whole thing. Great lines. You can't fight in here. It's the war room. And the Sellers' performance as Dr. Strangelove has one of the most satisfying and beautiful endings. The greatest line uttered by a human being in a film with Peter Sellers just getting out of a chair. And it cuts to a sort of montage of world destruction. The thing about it is, it isn't just this kind of crazy comedy, but it does really embody the absurdity of that time and what was at stake. Genuinely, it's hard to think now. I mean, yeah, there's climate crisis and so on, which seems a little bit inevitable. But then it was really like a couple of bad decisions could have just obliterated large swathes of civilized life forever. It was that close. I mean, you read about the Cuban Missile Crisis and the guy who put the key in and then didn't turn it, and you think this was the absurdity of reality. And I think in one of his crazy little missions, Oliver Stone showed Putin this film to try and ward him off nuclear destruction. I don't know if necessarily you got the same idea from it as Mr. Stone intended. It's one of those great sort of triple threats. It does it all. It is beautifully made. It is very funny, but it does have something
it
to
is
say.
Genuinely very powerful, yeah.
Both about men and their sexual tendencies and how that ties into genuine world destruction. On that note, we move on to the late 60s, which, it's every decade is a stacked decade. They made too many movies, I think. My late 60s movie, which is in fact the first movie we ever watched together, Jacques Tati's Playtime. Another one. I mean, a theme I think in some of these films we've been mentioning is to the colossal, to the enormous, to the all-consuming film, and Playtime is maybe the absolute example of that. It's constructed like a city-sized set was built because there was no place on Earth that could be so closely controlled for Jacques Tati's idea than a city he built himself. And the idea is it's sort of just plotless, characterless modernist satire. So Jacques Tati, for those who don't know, is sort of like a Charlie Chaplin, Mr. Bean style character for France. He made some early films of him sort of mucking around, slipping over on things. Often they're kind of satires on modernity in particular. He very much likes traditional France and he sees it sort of melting away. But they're funny and you follow him around as he sort of stumbles around reality. And he shows up in this one as himself. He is here, but then the film sort of loses him in corridors. He's trying to make an appointment. He shows up in this enormous tower block and he wants to meet some man for an appointment, but he just can't. He keeps trying to find him through all the cubicle blocks and then he sees him in the reflection. There's so many beautiful glass reflections in this film. Sees him in the reflection thinking he's on the other side of the road, but he's actually behind him. And so it's like 40 minutes of him not succeeding in making this appointment. But I don't even know if we figure out why. There's almost no dialogue of any meaning. It's just we're looking at things and people and scenarios unfurling. And then we lose Jacques Tati himself for what feels at least 40 minutes or longer, maybe a full hour. He's just gone. and we're somewhere else. I mean, the first part of the film is trying to find this appointment, and then we're in hospitals, we're in airports, we're in sort of sales conventions, but they all look like the same singular, like monolith of a block. And we're sort of exploring the city. Then we've got a middle section where we see the boss who he's been chasing, this sort of businessman, go home, and we're like outside his apartment, and we just watch from outside the windows as they like turn TV on, and the next door neighbor then meets Jacques Tati on the street and brings him in and shows him all his gizmos, all his meaningless kind of modern tricks, and we're just literally out on the street looking through the windows. We don't hear a line of dialogue as these people are just sort of clicking all their machines and watching TV, and then we're in next door who are doing exactly the same thing, and then we're back here. And it's really hard to understand how this film works as a film. Because genuinely, there is not a narrative here. There is not a relationship really between any two characters that lasts more than about 40 seconds. And then the last part of the film, which is maybe the most memorable section, is the opening of this restaurant. So there's this big fancy restaurant opening up. It's clearly been rushed to fruition, and this is Tati's sort of criticism of modern architecture, of modernity in general. It's not built to last. It's just stuck up suddenly overnight, and then they're expecting the elite to be catered to by this. It's falling apart even before the ribbon is cut. And so it's like something like an hour-long sequence of this restaurant opening and in real time crumbling under the feet of its many patricians. And we just see the whole thing come down around them into beautiful controlled chaos, because that is Tati. Everything is controlled, but chaos prevails. And then at the very end, we get this little epilogue where it's morning again. And it's the same city we've seen at the beginning, which was very regimented, very grey, very kind of lockstep, all tourists taking pictures of the same nothing. All life seems to have been sapped out of Paris. And this is Paris. This abstract modernist skyscraper city is old Paris. And we see reflections of the Eiffel Tower in like glass windows, but we never see it directly. We see the Arc de Triomphe, just glimpse it as they open a door and everyone's looking in the wrong direction. But at the end, suddenly it's the same city, but there's a certain life to it. The color has returned. There's a vivid, almost festival of life energy that even in this kind of oppressive modernist hellscape, there is still beauty, that humanity, that chaos does defeat all our attempts to order and rationalize the universe. And there's a wonderful ending where there's been this American tourist woman who's sort of the romantic lead. She has maybe one line, but she's the pretty girl that Jacques Tati bumps into towards the end, and she's leaving the city, and so he wants to get her a last souvenir, and he runs into the shop and he gets her this little gift. We don't know what it is. While she's on the bus leaving, she opens it, and it's a flower, a white flower. Okay, very pat, very cute, but it's a plastic flower, and a more cynical filmmaker would have made that the kicker. Even the flower, even the gift, the souvenir at the end is fake. The other kind of pat filmmaker would have made the flower real and said, in all this artificiality, there it is, one true glimpse of a real flower. None of that, a real, actual piece of life that Jacques Tati's very rustic character has granted to this American tourist who maybe has seen the errors of modernity. But instead it's a plastic flower, but she loves it. She's genuinely happy to have it. And then we see this flower, and we cut to a shot of one of the lampposts outside on this motorway they're on, which has, interestingly, the same sort of pattern. These drooping lids, which are the lamps, are just the same as the drooping lids of this flower. And so you see how this metallic construction mirrors an imitation of a flower, which imitates a real flower. And then we see all of these lamps, streetlights on the way to, and it turns to nighttime. And we see all the lights, and then it's dark, so we don't see the stems anymore. We don't see the posts. We just see the lights suspended in the blackness, and they look like stars. They look like the cosmos in the sky. And I think what we're seeing here is the fact that even all of this, the stupid square grey metal construction, is derived from beauty. All of it points back to the flower, to this shape. And it reminded me of Novalis and this blue flower. The sense that all meaning, all human invention, in fact, it's not all completely misery. It's not all just you spade up your coal and then you're a prisoner in this sort of man-made cell. But in fact, you can discover beauty and humanity and vivacity in all things, in all this stupidity, in all this vain hope to conquer nature. It is patent in all of reality. And it is a very funny film. It's beautifully made. It's unprecedented. There's nothing like it. Before or after, nothing like it. I like to compare it to a Bruegel painting, like the one we zoom in on at the beginning. That much detail. Anywhere in the frame, you watch it again, you see a joke. There's a joke over there. There's a joke over there. You can't see it all at once. You're constantly scanning these enormous wide frame. There's no close-ups. This is all shot in wide. And you're constantly looking for another bit you missed, another detail. Astounding film. One of the greatest films ever. Obviously bankrupted Tati. Obviously everyone hated it. Thought, what is this slop? Destroyed his career permanently. Yeah, Playtime, amazing film. I mean, I can say no more of it than that. But it was only recently I realized not only is it funny, not only is it scathing, but it is an argument for beauty in the modern world. It's still there. Don't be depressed. You can still find it even in a plastic, cheap souvenir tourist flower. It's still in there.
When I was looking at the late 60s, I was like thinking about maybe tapping into something of this 60s energy that's in the air. People start making films in a slightly more amateurish, I'm not saying that in a bad way, an amateurish, kinetic, lively, youthful way. There's all these
the new waves are really kicking off.
The various new waves. I love the Czech new wave films and the French new wave films and the British new wave films. But instead I went with a very, very old wave, so old, like medieval wave film. Another one of these films that feels like it belongs to a period before cinema, which is Tarkovsky's Andrei Rublev. It's about the painter, the icon painter, Andrei Rublev, most famous for that portrayal of the Trinity at the table. We go through various episodes in medieval Russia. It's a very episodic film, one thing happening after another. There are threads that run through, but it's essentially a biography of this icon maker bumbling around medieval Russia. Amazing cinematography and visual imagination. Really crazy stuff with balloons and airplanes and it has a very space age aesthetic sensibility, which I think meshes on really interestingly with the very authentic looking medieval Russian scenery we're around. Yeah, it's just great sequence after sequence. All those little episodes just have something in them that's utterly wonderful, utterly beautiful to look at. And among Tarkovsky's films where eventually the characters just, talk to each other about the meaning of life. It's the one where that feels like it's actually embedded in the scene and in the situation very thoroughly. These aren't abstract characters. This is a real place with real people. If you throw a rock out a window, it hits somebody. It's an embedded, grounded, real earthy world. It's a muddy world. It has a Bruegel sensibility about it as well. I mean, in Solaris, he zooms into a Bruegel picture meaningfully, so it's clearly in the brain, but it's that variety of life, circus of life. It's vivid and it's there. It's not just a sort of framework. But when you're watching Andrei Rublev, you really feel like you're in that place. Yeah, absolutely.
And you're hearing all the sounds and you're in the midst of it.
Yeah, and just I love you get a real encyclopedic, universal picture of humanity at the time. There's no real trajectory in the plot. There's no real arcs, I suppose, although there are arcs in the individual sections. There's no overwhelming arc that you can really wind everything into. It's a series of just gorgeous gems on a string. The thing I like most about it is this final section named The Bell, where we get a little biography within the biography. Our main character by this point, Andrei Rublev, has taken a vow of silence in protest to the problem of evil, to the silence of God in the face of universal suffering. We don't hear, and we just see him watching the entire final sequence. And our main character becomes this little boy, Boris, who's a kind of angsty, troubled, kind of snappy boy who wants to create a bell. For about 45 minutes, we just follow the creation of a bell. A huge bell. Like a huge bell for the cathedral. A bell that you're going to be able to hear from miles around. Which is a very hard thing to do. Very, very hard to make a huge bell that actually dongs. And Boris, he claims to have the secret of how it's done, given to him by his father. And so they all have to sort of follow him, trustingly, to see whether this bell he's going to make is going to work. We get very, for me, utterly fascinating stuff about how bells are made. Uh, and I think it makes it fascinating. It makes it innately fascinating. Where do you get the metal from? How do you pour it into the thing?
How many people do you need?
How many
Which
people do
is
you need?
a lot.
Loads. It's huge, huge project to bring people around. And then eventually they get this bell, and the kicker is the scene where they get it to ring, to see whether it rings for the first time. And we watch like so many of the best moments in film, it's about movement itself. We're watching the hammer of the bell get closer and closer to the actual bell edge, nervous about whether it's going to make a sound. And it does, and it makes a sound. And suddenly Boris, this guy who's been putting on a bit of a macho show, a bit of a dictatorial, I know what I'm doing show, suddenly becomes a little boy. He becomes like a little boy, breaks into tears, admits that he had no idea what he was doing the entire time. He had no idea how to make a bell. He had no idea. It was a fluke. And Andre breaks his vow of silence to console him. And it's just extraordinarily moving. And then we cut to Andrei Rublev's icons in the first color images we've seen in the entire film. The whole film's in black and white. Suddenly, in the context of this extraordinarily moving final sequence, we see color. And they're just, hypnotically beautiful. And then we end with this beautiful ambiguous image of horses in the rain. Yeah, it's so powerful. It's such a powerful, beautiful film. And as much as I wanted to pick something more fun and frenetic, like, it's just awesome. It's just an awesome, serious movie. Yeah. Right. My gosh, we're halfway through now. Maybe we do it in part 1 and 2. We do two
videos.
Uploads.
No, because I think that's that. It can't be a 6-hour video. It's just not.
Okay.
It can't be a 6-hour.